I'd like to call Mr. McMullen, the petitioner. Okay. And could you please state the relationship between you and Ms. Greer, the respondent?
She's my ex-wife and the mother of my child,
Okay. And you're referring to
Lariah
Mariah.
McMurray.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Are when were you divorced?
2013,
Okay.
2013.
Okay. What I'd like to focus on is on June 15th. Did you receive a call from your daughter on that date?
Yes, I received a call from my daughter probably 1 a.m. in the morning.
And what did you do after receiving that call?
I listened to what was going on in the background, a lot of yelling and screaming. My daughter asked me to come pick her up, and her mother in the background yelling and screaming.
Could you make out what her mother was saying?
Just yelling some obscenities and yeah, call that broke motherfucker, tell that broke motherfucker come get you. A lot of along the lines of those words being said. He ain't
Okay.
gonna
Okay.
a lot of obscenities.
Okay. Did you hear her making any threats at that time, or did you hear?
Yeah, she made threats on me and my daughter's life that she'll get us killed.
And you heard this while you were on the phone with your daughter?
Yes.
Okay. And how do you know it was your ex-wife making those threats?
Because I recognize her voice. It's a
Okay.
very distinctive voice.
After hearing this, what did you do?
I got up, I was basically still trying to calm my daughter down to de-escalate the situation, that maybe it's not as bad as it seemed, that she's just upset right now, but it continues to escalate and escalate.
Okay, so did you go pick your daughter up?
Yes, I didn't feel safe at first. I told them to just bring her to the Quick Trip on Wesley Chapel in Decatur, Georgia. And I sat up there probably like, maybe 5 or 10 minutes waiting and receiving calls from Miss Greer and her husband, Mr. Greer, just being belligerent and just like I'm out of control. And I'm asking them, just bring me my daughter. And that's all I realized saying. And after me having to sit there, I eventually just go to their neighborhood to go and pick up my daughter.
Okay, and when you said go to their neighborhood, did you go to the respondent's home?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and when you got there, what happened?
A lot of obscenities was being yelled towards the vehicle, and I didn't respond. I just was there to get my daughter. That's it.
Okay, so who was making the obscenities?
Miss Greer was
Okay,
yelling us.
so if you could please provide a little bit more detail. You came to the home. Did you get out of your car? You stayed in
No,
your car?
I stayed in my vehicle. I didn't even
Okay,
pull in her. I didn't even pull in her driveway. I turned around. I went down the street and turned around so I could get my daughter and leave.
okay. Did you watch your daughter leave the home?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and as she was leaving, did Ms. Greer try to prevent her from leaving?
It was I can't really remember if she did. It was more of just shoving at her and cussing at her and yelling a lot of more obscenities. That broke motherfucker don't care about you. He don't take care of you. He ain't shit. Just a bunch of that being yelled and them having to physically hurt her husband and her son's girlfriend, having to restrain her from.
When you say her, restrain who?
Kelly Greer had to be restrained by her husband and her son's girlfriend.
And this all occurred outside of the home within your
Yes,
site?
yes, it did.
Okay, was Ms. Greer trying to break away from them?
Yep, just a lot of like trying to just be more aggressive, just like get off of me, just trying to get to the car.
Okay, and was your daughter able to get in your car?
Yes, he was.
Okay. At that time, did you hear Ms. Greer make any threats as your daughter was leaving the house, entering into your car?
Well, when she was entering into the car, she continues to yell more obscenities and yells, "Y'all motherfuckers better get off around here before I get y'all motherfuckers knocked off." That was her line, her tone with us.
Okay, and she said that as your daughter was getting into the car.
Yes.
Okay. Did you happen to observe whether or not she had a weapon?
No, I couldn't tell.
Okay. What was your daughter's demeanor when all this was going on?
Just upset, just shaking. At this time, it's like 3 in the morning, and she had been at practice all day, so she was up. She was visibly shaking, upset.
What was her emotional state?
She was just like I said. She was very upset. Just that this happened. You know, it was just very traumatic. She was just
Was she
upset about it.
crying?
Yes, she was.
She was crying and she was shaking?
Yep. and just, me just trying to be like, it's going to be okay. And, her saying that it's not, because this is my mom doing this to me.
Okay. And do you believe that she was afraid to be around her mom at that time?
Very much so.
Okay. And what I want to talk to you about what happened in July. Did you drive your daughter over to her mother's house on July 4th?
Yes, I did.
And why did you do that?
Because my daughter was trying to get some of her things and her check that she had been withheld from for about 2 weeks. And I was a little apprehensive, but me thinking like it maybe it died down some. And that's why I took my daughter to pick up her things and her check.
Okay. And what time did you arrive at the respondent's home?
At 5 o'clock, we was prompted to be there. Y'all can come at 5.
Okay.
By her mother. Her mother texted her and said, yeah, y'all can come at 5 o'clock.
Okay.
On the phone.
And all right. So you brought your daughter to the home, and did you remain at the home?
Yes, I remained
waiting for your daughter?
Yes, I parked on the curb.
Okay. And how long was your daughter in the house?
I don't know, probably about 5 minutes.
Okay. And after you saw her go into the home?
Mm-hmm.
Did you see her come out of the home?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Before she came out of the home, did you have any interactions with Ms. Greer?
Yes, I did. She came out to, almost out to the car, telling me, come on, let's talk. And I could see that she had been drinking, and I knew that it wasn't a good time for, because her family was there. It was the 4th of July. I didn't feel like it was a safe, environment to talk to her about whatever had happened on June 15th. So I said, no, this isn't the right time to have this conversation. And she goes on and she starts to yell obscenities. And by this time, her son had came from the back, from around their house, and some people, her sister and some of her auntie, I think her auntie pulled up in the driveway at the time that all of this is starting to occur. And they have to physically drag her into her home, because at this time she's yelling, you punk motherfucker, you ain't shit, you ain't gonna take my daughter, I done raised her, and all of this stuff. So they have to basically drag her into the house. So I'm at this time, by this time, my daughter, when they get her into the house, my daughter comes out of the house, with them pouring behind her, and that's when it really escalated to the physical altercation, where her mom pushes her brother on, like, get her, and he literally pushes her and grabs her by her purse strap and starts dragging her. And at this time, I respond because I'm seeing my daughter attacked. So I step out of the car, as I get overwhelmed and to step towards the situation. So I step out of the car, and at this time, he's made eye contact with me. He's yelling, yeah,
Who is he?
Kamar Wilcoxon at the time. He starts yelling, yeah, motherfucker, this is what I've been waiting on, as he's dragging my daughter by her purse strap. That it's a video that it may only be a snippet of it, but the video is shot from inside of the car, where it shows where all of this starts, where her mother pushes him. Kelly Wilcoxon Greer pushes Kamar Wilcoxon to get his sister, and he starts to attack her. Once I step out of the car, he starts dragging her, like, yeah, motherfucker, this what I want, this what I've been waiting for. So by this time, he releases her, pushes her like kind of to the ground, and start coming towards me. At this time, my wife is yelling, get back in the car, blowing the horn. So I get back in the car. By this time, they had almost made it. They made it to the car. And this
Who is they? Who is they?
Kelly Wilcoxon Greer and Kamar Wilcoxon made it to the car, and that's when they started jaking on the door, shaking the car. Miss Greer, Kelly Wilcoxon Greer, kicks the vehicle, and as you can see in the second video, where they tried to send half of the video from their ring footage to say that Lariah was the aggressor, which it really shows as it all transpired. As you can tell, my story says where he drugged her, and then he released her because he reacted to me getting out of the car. By this time, they're at our vehicle, which that's what the second video showed, where that video has been altered and cut in half to show.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you, Mr. McMillan, but nobody's introduced a video at this point.
I got you.
So I just want you to talk about what you observed.
What I observed. Okay. And what I observed from this point on, them coming to the car, kicking and attacking the car. My daughter gets up, and she's upset, rightfully, and hits her brother. That's when they still are at the car, and it's an altercation away from the car, and Miss Greer is yelling, yeah, drag that bitch out too. She's talking to my wife, saying drag her out the car. Like they're really trying to they're trying to incite us to react to the negative stuff that's going on. And what I viewed is it kept getting volatile and volatile. They returned back to the car, shaking it and all of that, yelling obscenity. So we have to pull away from the curve, because by now my wife is hysterical, upset, rightfully so. And you know, we pulled down the street to the entrance gate of the community, and Miss Greer Wilcox and Miss Kelly Greer, she was running, chasing the vehicle, her and her son. And this is when we had to actually pull out of the neighborhood. So we pulled out of the neighborhood. Security, I didn't see this part, but security stepped in, and my daughter was able to get to the vehicle.
Okay, and so Miss Greer and her son were, after shaking your car, kicking your car, you drove off. They ran down the street after your car.
Yeah.
What were they saying? Anything at that time?
I mean, at that time I couldn't hear what I was just trying to separate from the situation.
Okay, and where was your daughter when this was happening?
She was actually, at this time, she was being held by his Kamar Wilcoxon's girlfriend, which is one of the witnesses. She was being held and prohibited from getting away from them.
Okay. And Kamar is her brother, correct?
Yes, Kamar is her brother. Okay. And he's 20 years old.
And he's 20 years old. Okay. And then after you pulled away from the home to get away from Ms. Greer and her son, what happened after that?
We was on the outside of the community, and Lariah gets away from them, and we go to call the police. We're no longer in their neighborhood, but we're just outside of their neighborhood, and we call 911.
Okay. And what was your daughter's demeanor at this time?
She's just upset. She's very upset, shaking, crying. It's just, you know, it was tough to see that.
Okay.
It really was.
Okay. And how long has she been residing with you?
She's been with me since June the 15th, the night that she was put out.
Okay. And to your knowledge, was she ever put out of her mother's home before that?
Yes, she was. She was put out of her home in November of 2022.
Okay.
I picked my daughter up from, I don't know if it was school or cheerleading, but it all revolves around cheerleading anyway. But I picked her up and I dropped her off, and no longer than I can get out of her neighborhood and go up the streets, probably not even a quarter of a mile. I was receiving a call from Kelly Greer saying, "You can come get this little motherfucker."
Okay. And what are your concerns if your daughter were to not have an order of protection? Right
now I can't say that I trust Miss Kelly Greer, you know, with the safety of my child, for what she allowed to occur and what she encouraged. And she since that day, she hasn't apologized. She has been belligerent through different terms, different avenues. She's called my daughter's coaches, and she's assassinated my character, saying that my daughter, you know, doesn't deserve
objection.
She doesn't
yes,
deserve.
What's your hold on, sir. Hold on. What's your objection?
He was about to testify as to what Miss Greer was saying to someone else who's not a party to this case.
So is your objection hearsay?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Ms. Fineman-Sowers, what is your response?
There's no exception to the hearsay rule, and I'm aware of with respect to what was being communicated to the school coaches.
Okay, so I will sustain the objection as to hearsay as to what other people said outside of Mr. McMullen's presence.
Okay. Mr.
What I can say.
Sir, hold on. Let your attorney ask a question, and then you can answer it. Okay, and she may rephrase it or say something else. All right.
Okay.
Do you fear for your daughter's safety if there were not an order of protection in place?
I do.
Okay. And what's your basis for believing that?
Well, I believe that because since this incident occurred, she has went to all measures to try to. She has assassinated my daughter's character, taking her out of her school activities, and just trying to affect her overall life. So, along with that and the verbal threats that was, you know, have been made and acted on, I can't say that I do feel safe with her having contact or the ability to go to her school. And
has your daughter mentioned to you any times that her mother's been physically abusive to her?
Other than just the not that I can recall, but just being very derogatory in her treatment and her talk, the ways that she talks to her. And it's never a time that my daughter does. She's a teenager, not saying that she's perfect from anything, but it doesn't just stop with her. You know, it's her being attacked and saying you ain't gonna be shit like your daddy, you gonna be broke. That's the constant in her tone every time that she's talked. I've heard her say that a number of times, and I have asked her to not talk to our daughter like that, but she feels that she's a child. I can talk to her however I want to. That has always been her response.
Okay. Do you have any reason to believe that what your daughter has told you about the acts of physical violence are not the truth?
No, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that because her mother is a real hostile person and very aggressive, because I have dealt with it, and in no hostile way have I returned any hostility towards her, but it still seems to keep rising. It still seems to be a hostility.
Okay. Do you know your daughter? How well do you know your daughter to be truthful, or is she just generally prone to lying? Do you know
she's pretty truthful. You know, I don't. She doesn't lie to me. You know, we have a pretty open relationship that she can talk to me, and even when it's things that I don't want to hear, you know, I receive them and I respond in a way that is going to be beneficial for us both. Not for me just to, not to say that she hasn't told me some things that I don't agree with or think that you know what I'm saying, you may be looking at it in a different way, but when it comes to her mother and her treatment, I don't think that she's stretching or fabricating the truth about that.
Okay. All right. Other than the acts of the obscenities, the verbal threats, and the physical altercations that you observed on June 15th and July 4th, have you observed any other acts by the respondent against your daughter?
No.
Okay. All right. No further questions.
All right, Ms. Simmons, you may cross-examine.
Thank you. Mr. McMullen, how would you describe your relationship with Mrs. Greer?
From my end, I have respected her and her marriage. From her, it's been very, very disrespectful and derogatory at every turn. Every time that she can cuss me out or tell me, "Oh, motherfucker, that little child support you ain't paying ain't shit," I wipe my ass with it and throw it away. That's my interaction with her. She's always like she's better. Like
Okay, so you would say you all don't have a good relationship, is that correct?
I mean, I don't have a problem with her. I don't have a problem with her. I don't know what her problem is with me, but she has one with me.
Okay, all right. So it's your testimony. Oh, I don't know why my battery light is going off on this computer because it's plugged in. I'm sorry about that. That just caught me off guard because plugged in. I'm like, why are you?
All right, let us know if you need to do anything.
Okay. I think it's showing that it's plugged in. I don't know. So
does it show you're plugged in on the bottom right and the little plug part? Or is it showing a battery?
It's showing that the battery's charging. So
okay, great. Okay.
I don't know. And it's saying 96%. All right, sorry about that.
No problem. Go ahead.
So, Mr. McMullen, when Miss Greer called you and told you to come get Lariah, or did Lariah call you and tell you to come get her?
I received
on June 5th.
I received a call from both of them and my mother. I received a call from Lariah, and I thought maybe it's just a teen overreacting. And then I received a call from her mother, and then I received a call from my mother hysterically saying that she done attacked that girl. She told me she got a gun.
I'm just asking you.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. So yes, you did talk to Miss Greer on that day, and she told you to come get Lariah. Did she prevent you in any way from
this is she didn't just tell me to come. She didn't just tell me to come get her. She told me, come get this motherfucker. She gotta go. This motherfucker can't be in my house. This little bitch can't be in my house no more. That's exactly what she said.
So she was upset, correct?
Yeah.
Was Lariah upset?
Yes.
Was Lariah yelling?
They both were yelling.
Okay. And did Lariah tell you that she had damaged property inside her mother's home?
No.
Did Lariah tell you that she had thrown a 10-pound dumbbell in her mother's home?
No.
Did Lariah tell you that her and Miss Greer were engaging in an altercation?
She told me that her mother attacked her.
Did she tell you why?
No.
Did she tell you that she had hit her mother in the head?
No, from well, she told me the attack came from her mother attacking her and keeping her mother off of her is how the knot got on her head.
Did you ask Miss Greer how the altercation occurred?
She wasn't, it wasn't a time that you could talk to her.
Okay, so that's a no.
No, I'm saying I couldn't. It's not a no that I didn't talk to her, but it was a no that I couldn't get through to her because she was angry.
So you don't know why Mrs. Greer was angry.
I do have some reason why she might be upset.
Okay, but she didn't tell you.
No.
Okay.
No.
And when you arrived at the house, and Lariah got in the car and you all left, correct?
Yeah, after being cursed out and yelled at, threatened.
All right. Okay, I understand.
Kelly Greer.
Okay, and a few days later, Lariah went to Florida with her mother, correct?
No, she did not.
She didn't go to.
No, she did not.
She didn't go with Miss Greer?
No, she did not.
Would you be surprised to know that Lariah just testified that she was alone in a hotel room with Miss Greer for 5 days while she was at cheerleading camp? You wouldn't be surprised?
Lariah didn't go. The incident that you're talking about, Lariah went to cheer camp before that happened. That incident that you're speaking of, ma'am, it happened on the heels of her coming back from cheer camp.
Okay, because Lariah testified that she went to cheer camp between that June 15th date and July 4th date. She actually said they got back 8 days before July 4th. Does that help your recollection a little bit?
Well, to me, I knew that she went to camp, but Lariah was forced to. If she went to camp with her mother, she was forced to go to camp with her mother.
You're saying if?
No, I'm saying yes. I'm saying if. Because
sir, I just need you to say whether. No, stop. You answer yes, no, or maybe. If you don't know if she went to cheer camp or not, you are free to say I don't know and explain your answer. Okay.
She went to cheer camp. What I'm saying is all of this has been a traumatic situation for me, and I remember all of these things, but the continuance of the reason why we filed a TPO is because you're right. She did go to camp with her mother against her will because she was thinking that maybe this would work out. Maybe me and my mother could have, and she still didn't feel safe.
All right. So she went to cheer camp with her mother. Did you hear about any altercations or any problems while they were going to cheer camp?
He said because she wasn't mostly with her mother. She was mostly.
So is that a yes or a no?
No.
Okay. And so after she returned from cheer camp, you took Lariah to her mother's home on July 4th. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you let Lariah go inside the home by herself, correct?
Yes.
When you pulled up to the house, did you see other vehicles there?
Yes, I did.
Did it appear that Miss Greer was having company over at the home?
Yes, it was.
Did you know whether or not, did you know who was inside of the home besides Mrs. Greer?
No.
No. And when Lariah went to the door, did she have any problems? Did you see anything?
Yes, she waited. She waited a while for them to come to the door.
Okay. But did you hear people in the backyard?
Nope. I didn't hear any back people. I didn't hear that.
You didn't hear anything, but you knew that there were lots of cars and vehicles there.
Yep, there was cars in front of their property and some in their driveway.
So you never went inside of Miss Greer's home, did you?
No, I did not. Okay.
And what happened when Lariah came back outside?
She was attacked.
Where was Mrs. Greer at this time when you say she was attacked?
Lariah came out of the house. Her mother, Kelly Greer, and Kamara Wilcoxon was behind her. They came outside behind Lariah? Yes, they did.
Okay, so when was Miss Greer at your car yelling?
When my daughter finally went in the house, that's when Miss Greer appeared and came out and came to my car and was saying, "We need to talk."
Okay, so you don't know if Miss Greer approached Lariah at any point while she was inside the home. Is that correct?
From what Lariah told me.
I said, do you know?
No.
So you didn't see any of that. So Miss Greer came out to your car and you're saying she wanted to talk to you. What did she want to talk to you about?
She was saying we need to talk about the situation that happened on June 15th.
Okay. And you refused to talk to her. Is that correct?
Yes, because I noticed that she was under the influence of alcohol.
So from June 15th to July 4th, we're talking about approximately 20 days. You didn't have a conversation with Lariah's mother regarding Lariah and what the incident that had been going on?
No, because when I tried to talk to Ms. Greer, only thing was yelled as obscenities, and there's no talking through that. When when somebody has no remorse or you can't even question them about what happened, is no way to have a conversation.
All right. So when she wanted to talk to you, you said she wanted to talk to you about the incident that happened on June 15th, correct? And did she say anything to you about she wanted Lariah to come back home?
Not when. Are you talking about that incident right there?
Yes.
When she asked me to talk to her, she went exactly from, oh, you ain't gonna talk, she went to cussing me out.
Okay. And so how did she end back up in the house?
They carried her. They had to basically carry her in the house.
Okay. And so Lariah came out the front door. Did she have her things with her?
Yes, she did.
What did she have with her?
Some stuff that she had delivered prior to her leaving. Okay.
And so at what point did things become physical between Miss Greer and Lariah?
When she encouraged her son to get physical with him, with Lariah.
So are you saying that Mrs. Greer told her son?
He pushed her son in the effects like, get that motherfucker. And that's when he attacked her.
So, all right. So you never saw Miss Greer physically touch Lariah?
Yeah, I seen her touch Lariah during the process of as it escalated. She was initiating with Kamar Wilcoxon to be.
What do you mean? What does that mean?
Holding her down.
You're saying Miss Greer was holding Lariah down? Why would she be holding Lariah down?
Because at the time she was yelling obscenities at her.
But what reason would she have to hold her down if you're saying she didn't have a problem with Lariah leaving?
Well, I can't say that I can't say that she didn't have a problem with her leaving, because by this time she was yelling that y'all motherfuckers ain't gonna take what I done raised for 16 years.
And so you're saying she was mad at Lariah, or was she mad at you?
She was mad at me, but she was taking it out on Lariah. I can't tell you where her anger was and why it came, where it came from, but I can tell you that it was being directed towards my daughter, and it had me uneasy, and I didn't feel safe, because what it did is it put me in harm's way, because as you see, those are two adults, and this is a 6'2", 250-pound Division I football player that is attacking my daughter. So this is hard.
Okay.
I'm trying to. I don't understand what you're asking me.
I'm just asking you what happened. That's it. So you're saying that he was holding your daughter down. What did you do?
I couldn't do nothing. I was. The fact that I'm not supposed to. I wasn't allowed on her property. Not saying that I have anything holding me against it, but they didn't invite me on their property. And at that time, me going onto that property, it was going to lead to more violence and somebody's getting hurt. And with me being, my life has already been threatened by Miss Greer on several occasions since June 15th, I didn't feel safe. And that was me sitting here having to relive it right now is one of the worst feelings ever, to watch your daughter be attacked by her mother and her brother. That's one of the worst feelings. I couldn't do nothing but what I did.
But you saw Lariah slap Kamar, correct?
Yes, I did. After that, no, I didn't. Matter of fact, I didn't even see her. I didn't even see her slap him. But in evidence that can't be presented right now, that's when I actually seen it, because it was so much craziness going on.
So you don't know what could have occurred prior to Lariah coming outside. Is that correct?
I know that it wasn't an incident between her and her brother because he was outside dragging his kicking and screaming mother into the house.
But that was after Lariah was already inside, though, correct?
Yep, correct.
Okay, and the police were called, correct?
Yes, they were.
Okay. Before, when you say he attacked Lariah and was holding her down, what happened after that? Did you drive off?
Yes, I did, because like I said, when he was holding her down and her mother was holding her down, her mother came back to the car and was shaking and shaking the car.
Okay, and you drove off and you said that Mrs. Greer and Kamar ran after your vehicle, correct?
Yes.
So where was Lariah at this time?
Getting up off of the ground.
So did they run past Lariah to chase your vehicle?
Yes, they was right there. They was right there at, like, it was, all of this was like right there, close in close proximity to my vehicle when this was happening.
Okay, so if they wanted to harm Lariah, why didn't they harm her then instead of chasing after your vehicle?
I mean, the harm had already been caused to me.
Mm-hmm.
The harm was really to bait me into losing my cool, and it escalated into something else. It wasn't she was a part of it. They attacked her, but it was also to draw me into escalate the confrontation.
So isn't it true that really that incident was a result of Mrs. Greer, being mad because you wouldn't speak to her about the situation?
No, I can't say that. No, I can't say that. I can say that all of this occurred because Miss Greer doesn't have control over anything. That's what she was upset about. She was upset about her daughter not wanting to cheer at a place that would cause her to get home almost 1 o'clock every night that she cheers.
So you're saying she was upset about Lariah cheerleading at that moment?
Mm-hmm. Because I myself was unable to drive Lariah to Kennesaw. All of this escalated after the fact that Lariah stated that I stated to Kelly Greer that I wasn't going to be able to drive to Kennesaw 3 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't say that it didn't stem from that day. It had been simmering and boiling since before that day, and nothing had been done about it.
Okay, and so Mr. McMullen, you do understand that you do not have primary physical custody of Lariah, correct?
Yes, I do.
You do understand.
But I also know that it is against the law. I also know that it is against the law for her mother and her brother to attack her. So you're saying that since she has custody, she's allowed to attack and let her grown son.
I didn't say anything. I just asked.
We're not. No, stop. We're not going to go back and forth between each of you. Just answer the questions, please, sir.
So is that a yes? You do know that she has primary physical custody of Lariah?
Yes, I do.
And you do understand that.
But I thought the divorce decree said we have joint custody, though.
I said physical custody. I believe you have joint legal custody.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. And so can you understand why Ms. Greer would be upset that you are not talking to her about Lariah and what's going on with her?
I can't, because it's upsetting that this even occurred. That's what's upsetting. I can't understand it. You said, you asked me a question. Can I understand why she's mad? I can't understand why she's that mad. I can't. I can't.
Have you all been having problems with Lariah being disrespectful and disobedient over the last year or so?
I can't say that I have, but her and her mother, she's a team.
Okay, but what about, didn't Lariah have problems with your mother as well?
She had problems with my mother after her mother called and told some untruths about what was going on.
All right, so you hadn't seen a change in Lariah's behavior?
Oh, what you mean? Since she's been with me?
No, in the last year or so.
Yeah, I seen her become more depressed and more angry because her mother won't stop.
All right, so you admit that she's been angry with her mother?
The treatment.
Is that a yes?
She's angry with the treatment. I can't say yes.
Has she had arguments with her mother?
Yes.
Have you talked to Lariah about things that her mother, the rules and things that her mother has in place and how she should respond to those things?
Your Honor, I'm gonna object to this line of questioning. This really is not relevant to whether or not these acts occurred. I think that what Ms. Simmons is trying to do is say that there's some sort of justification for the mother's acts.
All right. So the objection seems to be relevant, Ms. Simmons. What is your response? And I will say we are getting a bit into co-parenting disagreements versus whether she's committed an act of family violence against the...
Well, Your Honor, my point behind this was whether or not there has been things that have been building up. Whether have there been altercations and problems, not just, Ms. Greer, but between both of them? Have there been arguments? Have there been problems? And how are they trying to address those things?
Okay, well, I'm not sure how that's relevant to whether there's been an act of family violence committed.
Okay, all right.
I think it's clear that I've heard evidence that the parties do not talk to each other well, regardless of the reasons. And that's the adults I'm talking about. So I will sustain the objection at that point.
Okay. All right, Your Honor. Mr. McMullen, if this TPO is granted, what is your plan going forward as far as Lariah is concerned?
Pretty much getting custody of her.
Okay, so you do intend on filing a petition for modification of custody?
Very much so.
And you think it is your opinion that Lariah should not have any contact with her mother at all?
Not at this time.
Well, what time would be better?
I mean, my daughter doesn't feel comfortable. I can't tell you what her timeline is for her to be comfortable. And through this whole situation, there still hasn't been an apology or anything. It's just been, y'all are doing something wrong. So it's still coming like we're inciting the violence or the riot. We're not. I'm not. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, you can finish your statement.
I don't allow my daughter to disrespect her mother. Even the night that I picked her up, June 15th, I got on Lariah because I told her that is still her mother. At no time is it okay to be disrespectful to your mother. I have never parented my daughter in a way that she is to be disrespectful anywhere she goes.
All right. So you admit that there has been, disrespect coming from Lariah as well.
Again, I object on relevance.
I'm going to overrule the objection and let him answer this question.
Okay.
And then we're hopefully going to move on.
Yes, I'm going to be wrapping up, Yana. So you admit that there's been disrespect from Lariah towards her mother as well, correct?
I don't know how to answer that in a straight up way to say that it's disrespect on both ends.
Okay. And you said that Mrs. Greer hasn't apologized to Lariah, but isn't it true that you filed this petition for protective order just a few days after this incident?
No, I didn't file it directly after that. Directly after this happened, I filed it like 3-4 days after being continually harassed and sent texts from various sources that Miss Greer has access to. People sending texts, derogatory texts. Like I said, her husband still calling me and saying like, worried not about Lariah, but about cheerleading.
All right. So what are you saying Miss Greer did? Because you just said
okay. Well, she contacted her through Cash App.
Who is she contacted her?
Miss Greer, Kelly Wilcoxon Greer, contacted Lariah McMullen through various sources of media outlet through Cash App. She was sending her she was sending messages through Cash App. She sent a couple through her grandfather, about saying that, that's still your mother, that she loves you or whatever, but it still hasn't been, it still wasn't no remorse. And why I say it wasn't any remorse, because even after that incident, she was calling the school and taking Lariah out of all her activities, and also assassinating my character to the point where it's not hearsay if somebody tell you that this is being said about you and you're not acting.
I'm going to stop there. It is hearsay legally under the legal definition. So I think he's answered your question. Anything else?
Just one more question, Yana. Do you believe that you all need to go to counseling?
I absolutely believe my daughter needs counseling.
You don't believe that you all need family counseling?
I can't. We need, me and my daughter, we need family counseling. Yes, we do. But I can't say that I need counseling with Miss Greer, because it has never been a situation where each party is being heard. It's always you're talking down, or you know what I'm saying, you're validating why, and everybody continues to validate why it's okay for her to have done what she did to her child.
But isn't that something that counselors can assist with, a better communication between you?
And once again, I say no, because my daughter doesn't feel ready for it, and she's the most important person doing this. What I'm doing is not in any retaliation towards Miss Greer. It's to ensure that my daughter has a beneficial life, and what is happening to her, it is creating post-traumatic stress. And the reason why I speak on that is because it's something that I know about, that I receive from this lady. So
you don't think that it would be stressful for Lariah and to have such a strained relationship with her mother?
It's not, because it's straining on her to try to move past stuff, and it's being and old stuff is being rehashed. It's stressful on my daughter more than it is on her mother, if her mother is able to be derogatory towards her and to continue the onslaught of the mistreatment. That's what we're here about. That's why I filed a TPO, for my daughter's protection, for her, because after this, she's 16 years old. She will soon be an adult, and she has scars that have been inflicted on her by her mother.
And only her mother has caused her problems? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying this situation has heightened what her mother has been doing. That's what I'm saying. It's not that I'm saying that it's a strain. The thing what you're saying is, to me, I'm hearing your word about family counseling. I want to get my daughter counseling. So if she's in the headspace, because I'm still telling her that that's her mother. One day she's going to have to reconcile what I'm not trying to just take her mother out of her life. Her mother
isn't filing the TPO going to take?
Okay, we're not. I'm going to stop now. We're getting into argumentative. All I'm looking at is whether an act of family violence has been committed and whether there's a future likelihood of it. And generally, the best practice is not to order family counseling.
I understand that, yeah.
In temporary protective order cases. That might be part of a family court case and a guardian ad litem and all that jazz. But I think we've straight afield here.
Okay. And Mr. McMullen, just one final question. You've only heard of one incident involving Mrs. Greer and Lariah having a physical altercation, correct?
Yes, that I can recall.
All right. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Can you redirect Ms. Feynman-Towers?
Yeah, I just want to be clear. On June 15th, did you observe Ms. Greer putting her hands on Lariah?
No, I did not.
Okay, so you just observed her putting her hands on your daughter on July 4th, correct?
Mm-hmm. And I only heard threats on June 15th. Okay,
so right, you testified as to what you heard her mother saying over the phone before you arrived. Okay. All right, I have no further questions.
All right, anything else?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Any other evidence or witnesses from the petitioner?
No, Your Honor.
Y'all, Ms. Simmons, you may call and swear your first witness.
All right, Your Honor, I call Mrs. Kelly Greer. Mrs. Greer, are you Lariah's mother?
Yes, I am.
And can you tell the court why over the past year and a half you believe there's been problems between you and Lariah?
It started last year, actually October 31st to be exact. Lariah's like real big on cheerleading. So it was Halloween and they were having a trick or trunk at their gym. When I arrived, I'm like, wow, where's Lariah? And I immediately text her and she was like, well, I stayed after school for the trick or trunk with the band or something. So I said, okay. And I asked Lariah, I said, Lariah, if plans change, if you're not going to be where you're supposed to be at a certain time, please let me know. I also reiterated this with her father and he said, okay. Well, a couple of days later, which is now the first week of November, a couple of days later, Lariah was not at cheer practice again. She was late because the coaches are asking me, hey, where's Lariah? And I'm like, at this point, I'm panicking because I'm like, what do you mean, where's Lariah? I haven't heard from Lariah. So I immediately called Lariah, and Lariah said, oh, my dad said I could stay after school for a game. I said, well, Lariah, didn't the other week I asked you if plans were going to change, if you weren't going to be where you're supposed to be? I asked you to reach out to me. So she got very disrespectful, really upset. So I said, you know what? Just come on home. You're not going to cheer practice. You're just come on home. So she came home, and her father brought her home. And I was sitting down on the couch. And when she came through the door, I said, hey, Lariah. She storms up the stairs. And I was kind of laying down on the couch. So I kind of set up. I said, hey, Lariah, you don't see me? You're not going to speak? She slams her door. I said, oh, wow. So she's in her room throwing things around. And I said, Lariah, I said, call your dad back. Bet I can go with him. Bet. F you. I said, okay. I let Lariah go. She packed up her things. She left. At the time, Mr. McMullen did not have a place of residence, as he's never really had a place of residence. He never had a place of residence for Lariah to reside at. So Lariah had to go live with her grandma, Meredith McCluskey. That's her grandma's name. She had to go live with her grandma. Me and the grandma have I would say a decent relation. Well, I'm gonna be honest. We have a good relationship before July 4th. We would talk because, of course, this is her grandchild. And just a little backstory, I lost my mom to cancer about 3 years ago, and she was very vital in Lariah's life. And we actually, when my mom was on, and I'm trying to say this without crying, when my mom was on hospice, nobody really wanted to take my mom in. So I took my mom in because, her and my dad had been married almost 50 years. And my dad was saying, if I bring her home, it's going to be hard for me to watch that spot, which I got it. So I wasn't going to allow my mom to go into a home. So I moved her into our home in the basement, and she did hospice at our home. She lived about 5 days after she was on hospice, but Lariah was here the whole time. And I think it really did a number on Lariah. So after my mom passed, I kind of, started talking to Meredith McCluskey, that's Lariah McMullen's mom. And, we were kind of, if Lariah would do like little things, she would, say something to Lariah, just kind of being, she's trying to step up and kind of be in the ram for, her missing her grandma. Because she wasn't, even though Lariah's mom is her grandma, Lariah went to my mom's house every day from school. My mom for her. So anyway, like, I know I got a little off track. So anyway, me and his mom does have a good relationship. So on that incident in November, when he came back to pick her up, I didn't verbally ever tell Lariah to get out my house. I called him and said, hey, no, I didn't call him. I told Lariah, I said, Lariah, you call your dad and tell him to come get you. And she said, bet I can go with him, because she had been doing little things, trying to not live here because she doesn't want to abide by rules. So, Lariah McMullen had to take Lariah to his mom's house because he did not have a place of residence for her. She stayed over there maybe, I guess, like a month before they went and got a house. And even, his mom would call me a lot, and she would say, everything you said about Lariah, I see that it's true, because I'm having the same issues.
Wait, objection, hearsay.
Ms. Simmons?
Yeah, just state what you know. Don't say what someone else said. I'm
going to strike that last statement.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Mrs. State.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. This is my first time really dealing with something like this. So I'm sorry about that. So the thing about it is I never put Lariah out. So when he finally did get a place of residence, I guess I can't even mention what was said from his wife.
No.
Okay. So when he got a residence, Lariah moved in or whatever. And then in December, of course, it was Christmas time, Lariah came back home. Lariah.
Did you tell Lariah that she had to come back home?
No, I did not tell Lariah that she had to come back home. I didn't tell Lariah that she had to come back home. And I think he was raising his hand.
You can continue.
Okay. I didn't tell Lariah that she had to come back home. She actually came home like how most spoiled kids do. She came home for Christmas because she wanted her gifts. Of course, I would want my Christmas gifts as well. She stayed, and Lariah turned 16 January 26th. On January 15th, Lariah had a huge Sweet 16 ball Everything was fine then. She continued to, she had to go to Vegas for a competition in February. She had a couple of competitions in March. She had a couple of competitions in April. She's been here all this time. Now, back in, I want to say March, I did file a child abandonment warrant because he is in the rears thousands of dollars, and I filed a child abandonment warrant. And I really feel like a lot of this stuff is retaliation for that child abandonment warrant. We actually have to go to a continued hearing on Friday of this week.
Okay, so from December to June, Lariah's been living in your home. She was living in your home.
Correct.
Okay. All right. And what happened on June 15th?
June 15th, she was at the cheer gym in Kennesaw, which has always been her dream, that she begged me to take her to. And I asked Lariah before I signed Lariah up, I said, Lariah, I said, this is a huge sacrifice. Have you spoke with your dad about him picking you up? She said, yes, I did. And he said, it's okay. I said, okay. So I still signed Lariah. She tried out for this team. It's called the World's Team. She tried out for this team. She made this team. And she basically, was happy that she made the team. Well, I also have a 6-year-old daughter that cheers as well. So I went ahead and put my 6-year-old daughter out at Kennesaw as well. So on this night, they only practice 2 days a week, not 3. He said 3 days. But on this night, my baby has practice like from 5:30 to 7:30. Lariah's practice was from 7:30 to 9:30. So my son's girlfriend picked Lariah up that night from Kennesaw for me. She brought her home, but they stopped to get something to eat. She brought her home. And I guess I can't really say what conversation was had between them, but she brought her home. She came downstairs. I was on the phone with my mother-in-law, and she was like, will you hurry up and get off the phone? So I put my phone down. I said, what's going on? I need to talk to you. I said, is it an emergency? She said, no, because I knew on her face, her demeanor, I knew it wasn't an emergency. So I said, well, give me one moment. So she starts beating on the wall. And I get off the phone with my mother-in-law. She starts beating on the wall. She starts yelling at me because what it breaks down to, she wanted to go to her father's house because she told me that if she didn't go over there and be able to see her girlfriend was going to break up with her. And over here, she could have company, but you're going to have company. You're going to have supervised company. You're not going to have spend the night company. You're not going to have in the room company, not at 16. So she wanted to go over there. So I was telling Lariah, I said, you're doing too much. Like, she kept calling me out my name. She kept calling the BIT. I'm not going to say the cuss word. I don't even feel comfortable cussing on court, but she called me a BITCH several times. And when I really wasn't reacting, she took a 10-pound, one of my workout dumbbells and threw it at me. I had to duck. So I did not get hit. She picked up another thing and she threw it at the fireplace. So I'm like, you just need to go upstairs in your room. Her stepdad is saying, Lariah, just go upstairs. Star, that my son's girlfriend that was here, she was like, Lariah, just go upstairs. Like, just leave it alone. Lariah goes upstairs in her room. She's throwing things in her room. I'm telling Lariah, I say, Lariah, please stop throwing stuff. Paris is asleep. By this time, it's like 1 o'clock in the morning. I said, please stop throwing things. Paris is asleep. And I said, it's late. We got to get up and go to work in the morning. Like, just let it calm down. Well, she didn't want to hear that. That's when she started calling me a BITCH again. She grabbed all of my hair, threw me to the ground, and started punching me. Not one time in any of these incidents have I ever put my hand on Lariah. The July 4th incident, I did not put my hand on Lariah. I'm not angry towards Lariah. I'm not even angry towards Mr. McMullen. I'm just trying to parent my child the correct way. And just because she gets upset at the answers, or if I don't agree with what she's asking, she calls LaRoderick McMullen and he comes over here running to pick her up, to give her way. That's not, in my book, that's not parenting. Everything that a child asks for or asked to do, they shouldn't be allowed to do it. I'm not in agreement.
Okay, so I'm going to stop. I'm going to intervene right here. I think we're getting into.
Okay.
I understand there's a disagreement as to parenting. I'm just trying to hear evidence of whether there was acts of family violence or not. So, Ms. Simmons, if you could please redirect your client. I think she was kind of going off on a narrative at this point.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
So, how did on the June 15th altercation?
And hold on, in just a second. And Mr. McMullen, I need you to please check your face while we're doing this. Where if we were in court, people would be saying, "Please stop." Don't react. It doesn't make me believe or disbelieve anybody anymore. Okay, behavior in court is important. I know this is a difficult situation for everyone, and I just ask that everyone please remain civil. Go ahead, Ms. Simmons.
Okay. So on June 4th, you say Lariah grabbed you by your hair and slammed you down to the ground.
June 14th.
I'm sorry, on the 14th. Okay. Mm-hmm. And what happened after that? Did someone break you all up? What occurred?
Yeah, my husband and Star had to get Lariah off of me. All right. I even got a concussion. I had a knot on my forehead. And during that time, when Lariah was calling her dad and her grandma, Mr. McMullen was on the phone screaming at me, my husband, and telling us that he was going to come over here and F us up and that he was going to take us for everything that we have. That's what he was telling us. And he told us we better be ready for him when he gets over here. So when he wants to discuss anything about a weapon or anything, he threatened us. And we don't stay in a regular community. We stay in a gated community. So he has to actually use a code to enter in. And each time he comes over, he's using our personal family code that I did not give to him.
Okay. So he came over on that day and he picked up Lariah. Mm-hmm. And then when was the next time you saw Lariah?
A couple of days after that, because I took her to the Omni Resort in Orlando. We flew there on a Friday. We flew back on Wednesday.
And so who was with you and Lariah on that trip?
Just me, Lariah, and my baby girl, Paris.
Okay. Did you force Lariah to go on that trip?
No, I did not force Lariah to go on that trip. Lariah, when we first were leaving, she wanted to stay at school because they were having like a cheer camp at school, and it was supposed to be ending. Well, the time it was ending, we would have missed our flight. Well, our flight got delayed, thankfully, and she was able to stay at the cheer thing at school, and she was cool with that. So we picked her up from the school, and my husband took us directly to the airport, and she was fine. I mean, she had a blast. She went, and even though Mr. McMullen says she wasn't with me, she slept in the hotel room with me. Me and her even went out to dinner a couple of nights. So I'm not sure how she was forced.
Okay. And so when you all got back, did Lariah go back with her dad?
Yeah, she did. We got back about 12 a.m. and she called her dad. She was in the back of the car. She was like, "Did you get my text?" And he came to the house at probably like 1 o'clock in the morning to pick Lariah up.
Okay. And did you prevent that in any way?
No, I didn't.
Okay. And so let's talk about the July 4th incident. Why did Lariah come to your house on July 4th?
Lariah texted me on July 4th asking if she could come over to pick up some. She said she was on her cycle. She didn't have any pads. She needed some pads and she needed to get her check and a gift card. So just with the history of me and Mr. McMullen and what had already went on June 14th, my husband wasn't here. It was just me and my baby girl here. And my husband said, because he went to go pick my son up from the airport. So my husband said, "Well, I don't want you to be home alone while they're there. So just wait till I come back." So tell Lariah about 5 o'clock. And the reason being is because me and Mr. McMullen's marriage was not a good marriage. He was very abusive, physically abusive. As a matter of fact, after I had Lariah, when I brought her home, he fought me the day that I got home with Lariah. So I'm already a little uneasy about him. And with the incident that happened on June 14th, I didn't want to be here alone with them because I knew Lariah was going to have to come in the house and, get her stuff. And I was fine with that. So Lariah got here. And the reason why she stayed at the front door for so long, because it was the 4th of July. We were all on the bottom deck. The kids were outside, we were grilling. It was the 4th of July. So that's why it kind of took us a long time to come to the door because we didn't know that she was at the door. When she called me and said she was at the door, I immediately came upstairs and let her in. And when she came in, I said, "Hey, Lariah, how you doing?" I said, "I miss you." I gave her a big hug. And I said, "Everybody's downstairs. You should come and, speak to everybody downstairs." I said, "Paris, would love to see you." She went downstairs. She spoke. So by this time, I walked around the yard and I walked up to Mr. McMullen's car, his wife's car. And I said, "Can we talk?" And he said, "Right now ain't a good time to talk." I said, "Well, when is it a good time to talk?" I said, "It wasn't a good time for y'all to come to my house on the 4th of July, but I allowed it." I said, "But when is the good time to talk? Because if we're going to co-parent this child and if Lariah is going to be a child house, we need to talk." And when he was saying that I haven't offered an apology, I cannot even get in contact with my daughter because they have me on block. And Lariah had a cell phone on our family plan and I tracked her location. She wasn't at school where she was supposed to be. And I told her, I said,
Okay, now
let's say on July 4th. I'm sorry.
Okay, on July 4th. Okay.
So you go outside to talk to him, and what happens?
I go outside and talk to him, and he was like, nah, right now is not a good time. He started rolling up the window. So I'm like, what do you mean right now is not a good time? Like, I just can't just have my daughter in your care. I can't get in contact with my daughter. I don't know what's going on. I don't know her well-being. I don't know anything because I'm very concerned because he has not been a supportive dad, like as far as taking care of his daughter financially or even providing a roof over her head. He's just now been able to do that. So, so by this time, my son, I'm sorry.
You know, all of this, again, Your Honor, is not relevant to whether or not acts of violence had occurred. And I just ask that all this be stricken.
Ms. Simmons?
I'm just asking her to explain what happened on July 4th. So Mrs. Greer, if you can just talk about the events of July 4th. What happened?
Yeah, whether he's paid child support or not is not relevant to whether there has been an act of family violence. It might be relevant to the ongoing course of conduct between the parties. But what I've heard so far is that she walked up to his car and he said he did not wish to speak to her. Yeah. And she remained and was about to explain. So without going into the whole background, can you say what happened per your attorney's question?
Yes, Your Honor. So I went up to his car and my son came from, I'm not sure if he came from the garage or around back, and he was like, Mama, just leave it alone. Don't worry about it. And I was like, no, because I was very
objection. This is hearsay.
How's it hearsay if I'm telling what?
Ma'am, you cannot say what someone else has said if they have not testified, or there's not another exception.
I didn't say what somebody else said.
You said my son said.
No, my son was
told me. Yes, that's hearsay. What your son is telling you is hearsay. So I'm sustaining the objection as to hearsay unless Ms. Simmons has an exception or other response.
No, Your Honor, just don't say what your son said to you.
Okay, so
what happened?
Okay, so my son took me in the house.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all I was gonna say. My son took me in the house. Lariah was in the house, and I'm not sure what words were exchanged with her and my son. So I walked out the front door. I was the first one out the front door. I walk out the front door and I'm headed back to Mr. McMullen's car to tell him, like, this is how she acts when she comes over here. She's very disrespectful. She had just cussed out everybody from down to my aunts to my mother-in-law. She had just cussed out everybody in the household, everybody in the house. And everybody was shocked. So when I walked out the door, Lariah runs out behind me and said, I'm going to give that B another knot on her forehead. So that's when my son, because Lariah was running after me, that's when my son did pull her by her purse strap. And by this time, I'm at the car. I never during this whole time, I never put my hand on Lariah. I not one time put my hand on Lariah.
So you're saying your son was restraining Lariah because she was running after you?
Correct, because I was already at their car. I wasn't the last person out the house. Lariah wasn't running out the house. I was already at their car. She told me, like I said, she had just cussed out everybody in the house.
Okay. So Lariah was upset. Do you know why she was upset?
Because, like I said, her and my son had exchanged words.
Okay. All right. And so your son grabs Lariah by her backpack to prevent her from getting to you. And then what occurred next?
What occurred next is, I'm trying to play it back in my head. I mean, I have the video, but what occurred next was my son went up to the car, Mr. McMullen's car, and was telling him, well, I guess I can't say what he said. So, okay, so my son went up to Mr. McMullen's car. Mr. McMullen, during this whole time, he never got out the car, not one time. He never got out the car, not one time. Lariah threw her cell phone at my son, and he knocked.
You need to look at the camera, stop making faces.
Are you talking to me?
I think she's talking to her client.
Oh,
I'm sorry. I thought it was muted. I apologize.
Okay.
All right. Go ahead, ma'am. You can continue. You said that Lariah had thrown a phone at someone.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Your Honor. She threw the phone at my son. My son hit the phone and kind of like ricocheted off Mr. McMullen's vehicle. And she walks up and she slaps my son. And of course, like he did get her off of him. And she ended up on the ground, but that's because he kind of like pushed her away. He did not ball up any fist or anything and hit her. And even then, when my son was trying to walk away, Lariah grabs him by his leg. She's still trying to fight at this point. Lariah grabs him by his leg. Mr. McMullen pulls off. And the only thing that kind of, I guess, might have slowed him down because he had to wait on the gate to open out the neighborhood because we're in the very first home. So he didn't have to go too far. So he didn't get out the car not one time if he thought anybody was doing anything to his daughter. I did not hit Lariah on the June 14th incident. I didn't hit her on the July 4th incident. So I'm not sure why I'm being withheld from having any, like, I don't have to have contact with Lariah, but I don't want this TPO in place because it's okay. I'm sorry.
We'll get to that. 1 second.
Okay.
So, have you ever threatened to kill Lariah?
No, I have not.
Have you ever been arrested on any domestic violence charges?
I've never been to jail.
Have there ever been any defects investigations against you?
No.
Has Lariah always had a cell phone?
Yes. Well, I mean, at that, not all her life, but maybe like around, like 9 years old or something.
Have you ever prevented her from calling 911?
No.
Have you ever had any physical altercations except for the June 14th, 15th incident with Lariah?
No.
Did anything between you and Lariah get physical on that November incident?
No.
All right. And can you tell the court why you don't believe that there should be a TPO, a protective order, preventing you from seeing your daughter?
Because my daughter needs some help. My daughter now is on my husband's health insurance, and I can't get her the help that she needs with the TPO in place. I can't be a mother. I've raised this child by myself for 16 years. Why all of a sudden now am I painted to be an aggressor when I've taken hits from Lariah? So, and we all know that's on this call, we all know how teenagers are. And right now we're still a family and we just hit a rough patch in our life. And instead of trying to take her away or trying to keep me away, I think we should work together to try to get some counseling. And like I say, she doesn't have to come back home.
So you're okay with Lariah staying with her dad?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're not asking the court to, make Lariah come back home. Is that correct?
That's correct. I'm not trying to make her come back home.
Well, what type of contact are you asking to have with Lariah?
Like, let's just say, for instance, if she has to go to the doctor, it's even the things with school, without him having custody, the school can't even contact him. I found out she hasn't been in school the last 3 days. I just checked the portal. Okay.
All right. We're getting.
Okay. So as far as like the TPO goes, I cannot have any interactions like her educational wise, anything. I can't take her to her appointments. Lariah needs therapy. I can't take her to her appointments. And I don't have to physically take her there in my car. But I mean, even if I have to meet them there to sign up on the insurance, because I don't believe he can't take her on my husband's insurance to her doctor's appointments. And the last time, well, I won't go into that.
Are you afraid that having a temporary protective order against you would affect your business in any way?
Yes, it will, because I've been.
Okay, I'm gonna.
Threat to Lariah in any way?
Not at all. I would never harm my child.
Okay. And have you ever pulled a firearm and threatened Lariah?
No, I have not.
Okay. All right. Nothing further on the subject.
All right, Ms. Feynman-Sowers, you may proceed.
No, just Ms. Goodman, my understanding is that the child is on the Zoom and would like to be able to observe what's happening in her case. I don't
know that that's a good idea.
Okay.
She's a minor, and that's like a child sitting listening to a divorce case.
Yeah. All right.
I think
she had asked me to ask the court.
Yes,
so that's
I
what
understand, but I regardless of how I rule, there's obviously some bad dynamics going on here, and I don't want to increase that by having her listen to the different things that people may or may not be saying.
Okay.
He has a right to be here.
Yes.
Thank
you. Ms. Greer, you do own a gun?
Yes, I do.
How many guns do you have in your household?
One.
And where is that gun stored?
It's actually in a lockbox, and it's actually it's in my car. It's in a lockbox in my car.
That's where it is right now, but it's been in your home previously.
No.
You've never had the lockbox in your home?
I've had it in my home, but you asked where it was right now.
I said, other than where it is right now, isn't it true it's been in your home?
Yeah, it's been in my home in a lockbox.
Okay. That's typically where you keep it?
No, I typically keep it in my car.
Okay. Was the lockbox in your home on June 15th?
I went and got it out of my car.
On June 15th, you went to your car and you got the lockbox?
Correct. When Mr. McMullen said he was going to come over here and kill us.
And was the lockbox was in the home when you're during the altercation with your daughter on that date?
No, this was after the altercation.
Okay, so your testimony is you didn't bring the lockbox into the house until after the altercation had ended?
Correct, because the altercation had ended. She was waiting on her dad to come pick her up. She was in her room waiting on her dad to come pick her up.
Okay, and so at that time, you admit to then going out to the car to get the lockbox. Did you ever take the gun out of the lockbox at that time?
No, I didn't take it out of the lockbox at that time because honestly, I could not even remember the code offhand. I have the code stored in my phone.
Okay, but and isn't it true that at the time you were yelling, asking your husband to give you the code to the lockbox?
I did ask him to give me the code, correct?
Okay, and at this time, isn't it true that your daughter was in her room?
She was in her room with the door closed, correct?
It's possible that she could have heard you asking your husband for the code to the lockbox.
Yes, that's correct. I just said that's correct.
Okay. And at the time that this occurred, had you been consuming any alcohol?
No, not at that time that it had occurred. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning by that time.
Okay. Have you been consuming alcohol prior to that?
Earlier in that evening.
Earlier in that evening. Okay. What time did you start drinking?
Ma'am, I don't remember the exact time. Let me see. When they got here, so maybe about 8 o'clock.
Okay. And when did you stop drinking?
When Lariah came downstairs beating on the wall.
And what time was that?
This was probably about 10. When this incident happened, it was spanned over hours. It went on for hours.
So again, my question was, what time did you stop drinking?
I would say they got here about 9 o'clock.
Okay. So just to be clear, you're testifying that on June 15th, you only were consuming alcohol between 8 p.m. and 9:30?
Yes.
Were you intoxicated?
I mean, I had a couple of drinks. Like I wasn't like, I could not walk or anything like that. No, okay. I might have been tipsy. I wasn't intoxicated, but I was at home.
Okay. And isn't it true that that's your typical routine each evening? To have a few drinks after work?
No. That's not my typical routine.
Okay. Well, isn't it true your typical routine was at least 3 or 4 times a week?
A couple of times a week. But what does this have to do with the case?
Ma'am, you don't get to ask questions to the attorney, same as I told the gentleman, okay?
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
Just answer the questions, please.
Okay. So yeah, maybe like 2 or 3 times a week, but not every evening.
Is it more than 2 or 3 times a week?
No, it's not.
It's not. Okay. And that's the truth.
Yes.
Okay. Well, now we're hearing that these events on June 15th, they occurred over the course from 8 p.m. until 1 o'clock in the morning.
It was probably like 8. No, it wasn't 8 p.m. That's the time I told you I started drinking. They didn't get home. They didn't get home, start and bring Lariah until about 9:30. Remember I told you they stopped and got something to eat after practice.
Okay.
So this went on because Lariah still had on her cheer stuff when she came downstairs. So this went on from like 9:30 to it was probably like 2 o'clock in the morning by the time Lariah McMullen got over here to pick her up.
Okay.
It actually could have been later than 2 o'clock a.m.
Okay. And isn't it true that during the course of those hours, you entered into Lariah's room and you pushed her into the closet?
No, that's not true.
That's not true?
That's not true.
That's not true. Your testimony is she's the one who attacked you?
That's correct.
And you never laid hands on her?
I did not lay hands on her. I was trying to get Lariah off me. It took Star Burrell and my husband to get Lariah off of me.
So your testimony is Lariah was attacking you and you had to get 2 other people in the household to get her off of you?
I didn't have to get it. They were already standing there to see what was going on. They saw what was going on. I didn't have to get them, but yeah, they had to pull Lariah off of me.
And again, you never struck her other than to push her away from you, is your testimony?
No, I did not strike her. I did not strike her.
I want to then talk a little bit about July 4th.
Okay.
I'm a little confused because you first testified that you said it was okay for Lariah to come over, but it had to be at a time that your husband was going to be back from picking your son up from the airport. But then you also had a party at the house and there were many other people there.
Yeah, I told them to come at 5 o'clock. It wasn't many other people over here. It was my aunt, my sister, my 3 nephews, my husband, my other daughter, and my son. We didn't have like a big, we don't have big, huge parties. So I told them to come over here at 5 o'clock. They didn't get right over here. Right.
I'm sorry. When you say they, do you mean Mr. McMullen and Lariah?
Lariah, yes. Lariah and I get over here right exactly at 5 o'clock. I told her she can come at 5 o'clock.
Okay. What time did the guests arrive? Your other family members?
Almost right at 5 o'clock as well, like 4:30, 5 o'clock. We didn't have a whole bunch. It was literally my sister and her kids, my aunt, and my husband and my kids.
Okay. On July 4th, did you consume any alcohol before your daughter arrived?
Yes, it was the 4th. Yes.
Yes. Okay. And about how many drinks do you think you may have had?
Probably by that time, just 1 drink because I had just got done grilling out. We were cooking. I had been cooking all day to prepare for 4th of July.
Okay.
And it was a glass of wine. I had a glass of wine. Like I was outside cooking. That's why we couldn't hear Lariah at the door because I was outside it was the 4th of July.
Okay. So your testimony is you had 1 drink at that time.
Correct.
Okay. Isn't it true that after your daughter was let in the house, you went to the car in which Mr. McMullen and his wife were waiting, and you were shaking the door, yelling at them?
Is this a question? Or are you asking a question?
He said, isn't it true? So It sounds like a question so far.
No, can you ask the question again? You said when Lariah was in the house, did I go back out to the McMullen?
Ma'am, let her ask the question again. Go ahead.
You testified that Lariah went in the house and then you went over to talk to Mr. McMullen. You went to his car. Correct. And isn't it true when you were at that car, you were yelling and you and your son were shaking that car trying to open the doors? Are you talking about the first time? Because remember, I went up to the car twice trying to talk. Are we talking about the first time? The first time.
Yeah, the first time. No, I was not at there. As a matter of fact, remember I told you that my son took me back in the house. Even Mr. McMullen told you that he took me back in the house.
Okay, and what about the second time you went to the car? Isn't it true?
The second time, now my son was probably pushing the car, but I was not.
And you deny kicking the car?
I don't remember kicking the car. I had on like some flip-flops. Even when the police came, they asked me, did I kick the car? And I showed the police the flip-flops. They said, did you have on those shoes? I said, yes.
Okay.
And if I did kick the car, it's because he started rolling off and I was probably trying to get away from the car, but I don't recall kicking their car.
Okay. Do you deny making any threats either the first or second time that you were at the car in which Mr. McMullen and his wife were waiting for Lariah?
Did I make threats towards
Mr. McMullen or toward Lariah?
Lariah wasn't at the car the first time. Lariah was still in the house. I didn't even make a threat the second time to Lariah. And me and Lariah were not even really exchanging words. This incident on July 4th kind of mainly involved my son going up to their car, exchanging words with Mr. McMullen. I wasn't, if anything, Lariah was outside cussing, saying, F all y'all, and I'm gonna get to be another knot on her head. The whole July 4th situation wasn't really even an exchange with me and Lariah. It had something to do with her and my son. It's like a sibling thing. It okay. Had. I'm sorry.
So you're denying you encouraged your son to get her?
I am strongly denying that because even on the video that I have, and I even
I didn't ask. I didn't ask you.
Yeah, I'm strongly denying that he did not. Okay. I did not entice. Why? First of all, my son is away in school. Why would I put my son in a place?
I didn't ask you that.
We're not asking questions back and forth. Remember?
No, I did not put my son. No, I did not push my son and tell him to get my daughter.
And you didn't do anything to try to protect your daughter when he was dragging her and throwing her to the ground.
I didn't. Of course, I would have done something, but he wasn't dragging her. He wasn't dragging her. Look, like I said, Lariah ran. Remember when I said Lariah threw her phone and it ricocheted off their vehicle and she walked up to him and slapped him? I can't see how somebody that can be drugged and thrown to the ground can slap somebody too. I did not.
Well, you did testify that he did grab her by her purse,
right,
and he was pulling her. And you also testified that you believe he pushed her, and that's maybe why she fell to the ground, correct?
Ms. Bowers, is that okay? I was going to say, this is a question.
So he pulled her by her purse strap, trying to detain her from going after me because she had already said she was going to hit me again. As far as the slap, that's like somebody walking up, slapping you, and you just kind of like, you know, like you like in shock. So she fell. She didn't get pushed to the ground. We were on concrete. If she got pushed to the ground and drugged, the police would have locked me and my son up that day. She did not have not one visible bruise at all, and she was checked out by the EMS.
Okay, so your testimony is that none of this would have occurred, or your son would have been arrested?
I'm sorry, can you ask that again?
I'm going to withdraw the question. All right. You do admit that your son was pulling on her purse.
When I say pulled, Attorney Flowers, I don't mean like pulling her like that. It's like how, so remember I said, I'll walk out the front door first, right? She said she was going to hit me again. So it's like she was running after me. My son reacted and pulled her purse strap to stop her from going after me. He let her purse strap.
Okay, so your testimony is...
Let her finish, please. Let her finish.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So when he let her purse strap go, she wasn't on the ground or anything, because by this time I'm at the car trying to tell Mr. McMullen, look at what she's doing. You need to get out the car and say something. You need to do something. By this time, my son is at the car as well. Now, I can't repeat what he said because that's hearsay, but Mr. McMullen never got out the car. If his daughter was supposed to be getting drugged on cement, he never got out the car. Did that answer your question? I know I'm not sure if that answered your question.
See, you never told your son to take his hands off your daughter, correct?
Did I ever tell my son to take his hands off my daughter? His hands was never on my daughter. Are you talking about the purse strap?
Okay, so your testimony is he only touched her purse. He never touched her body.
He grabbed her purse. Now, as far as like the testimony part, keep in mind, I'm before them. I'm walking out before them. I was the first one out the front door. So so I'm walking to the car. What's going on in the rear behind me? I can't see that.
Okay. All right. So I just want to be clear. You had one interaction outside with Mr. McMullen, and then you went back into your home, and it was actually your son who brought you back into the home after that first interaction, right?
Yeah, I was already outside when they came up, so I didn't leave out the home. When they first pulled up, remember I told you we were all out back? I was already outside. I walked around the home. I did not.
Okay. Well, then you walked up to the car. Mm-hmm. You had this interaction, and your son brought you back in the house, right?
Correct.
Okay. So you're in the house, and your daughter's in the house. Mm-hmm. Why did you leave the house the second time?
Just as I said, my daughter and my son had exchanged words. Lariah cussed out everybody in the household. The guests that I told you that we had over, my mother-in-law, my aunt, my sister, and my nephews, she cussed out everybody in the household, telling us, "Elf y'all," all this other stuff.
You get to explain her answer. Go ahead.
You telling me to go ahead, Your Honor?
Yes.
Okay, so I was walking outside to tell Mr. McMullen, hey, you need to come, like, look at what she's doing. Like, she just cussed everybody out in here. Like, something needs to be said to her. So that's when, because I said, I'm going outside and I'm going to tell your daddy what you in here doing. That's when I walk out the door first. Then she comes and say, I'm going to put another knot. I'm going to hit you. I'm going to put another knot on your head. I guess that's hearsay. I can't say that. I'm sorry. But she says
you can say what she has said as she has testified.
Okay. Yeah. She said she was going to hit me. And my son basically protected his mom by stopping her from hitting me. That's why he pulled her by her purse strap. So it wasn't like premeditated for all of us to go outside. It was like we had family. It wasn't friends. It was my family over here.
Okay. So at the time you left the house, Lariah was right behind you. Was she actually had a bunch of belongings in her possession. She was trying to get back to the car, correct?
She didn't have a bunch of belongings in her possession. She had just only had a package, like a mailer package, like a small, like an Amazon package, the white package. She only had that package in her hand. She didn't have.
She was trying to get out of there. She was trying to go back to the car, correct?
She was trying to go. I mean, I didn't tell Lariah to leave out the house. Lariah, like I say, Lariah was in the house cussing everybody out, and everybody was in shock because inside our household,
ma'am, you need to answer the question yes, no, or I don't know, and then you may explain.
Okay, what was the question?
The question was, I was asking, isn't it true that before you went out of the house, it was actually Lariah who was attempting to leave?
No, she wasn't attempting to leave. She didn't even get the stuff yet. Because remember I told you she needed menstrual pads. She wanted to get some of her clothes. And she came over here to get her check and her gift card. Okay. She left out the house without getting the things that she came for. We didn't tell Lariah to leave. Lariah left out the house because she didn't want me to go back out to the car and say anything to her father.
Okay. So is it which happened? Was she trying to get out of the house to prevent you from talking to her dad, or was she in the house trying to leave the house? Which was
not. You keep asking the same thing. She was not in the house trying to leave the house. She was in the house because Lariah hadn't even went upstairs yet to get her stuff out of her room. Remember I told you her and my son had like a sibling, like they were going verbal altercation, and then she cussed everybody out in the house, the guests, my family that were here. And I left out of the house to go talk to her father. Nobody told Lariah she had to leave. Nobody was trying to hold Lariah here.
Okay. So your testimony is after your son pulled her back from coming after you, that Lariah then went upstairs and packed her packages or whatever other possessions she left with?
I didn't say that.
You said she left the house with a package.
Because you asked me, did she have a whole bunch of her belongings? And I told you, no, she had like an Amazon package.
Okay. So when let's just be a little more clear. What floor was she on when she was holding the package and cussing out the relatives, did you say?
The main floor.
The main floor. Okay. So this is all happening and you made the decision then to go out and speak to her father?
Correct. And I told her because I was trying
I didn't ask you that. Okay. So your testimony is that she then followed you, but this was before she had an opportunity to collect her belongings from the house?
She had plenty of opportunity to collect her belongings from the house.
Okay. When she followed you out of the house, did she have any belongings with her?
She had her purse and the Amazon package.
Okay. She had the purse and Amazon package. And she had never gone up to collect her things from her room?
Not that I know of, no. It was nothing down here when she left. She had never went to go collect anything from her room or her check that was on the counter.
Okay. And how long was she in the household? She was there 5 minutes, right?
No, she wasn't here 5 minutes. When she came in, because remember, I said that I went out to Mr. McMullen's car. Lariah was in that house that whole time. That exchange went on maybe at least 5 minutes by itself. And before
how long? How long was Lariah actually in the home?
Lariah was in the home, I would say maybe about, when she came in the home, she went downstairs to the basement outside to speak to everybody. She was down there speaking for maybe about 5 minutes. Then she came upstairs. So total, it was probably about 10 minutes that she was in the home. It wasn't just 5.
Okay. So when she, and it's true, like when she arrived, that's when you went out to speak to her father and her stepmother.
Yeah, after I let her in the house, yes.
Yeah, after you let her in the house, right. And there was some sort of arguing that occurred outside of the home, and then you went back in the home, right?
Yeah, when I walked up to the car the first time, yes.
Okay, and so you come back into the home, and your testimony is that you heard Lariah cussing out the relatives.
Yes, I seen it, yes.
Okay, and after hearing this, you decided to go out to the car again to tell her father what Lariah was doing?
Correct.
So it seems to me that your position on this is really that you've done nothing wrong, that Lariah is actually the problem here. Is that correct?
I'm not saying that my child is the problem. I'm just saying that when she came over here, because this TPO was taken out, Judge Davis keep asking for us to explain how it was at the family violence, right? So when she came over here, I never put my hands on her. I never put my hands on her when she came.
So your daughter's lying then if she's saying that you pushed her into the closet, she hit her head, that she's lying about any threats of physical violence she may have made. She's lying.
Okay, so hold on. I'm going to intervene. So that's really not appropriate. Whether someone's lying or not is a question for the court to determine, and the trier of fact determines credibility of witnesses. So there may be another way you can ask that question, but this witness cannot testify whether another witness is lying or not.
Okay, all right. Now, isn't it true that you believe that your daughter Lariah has been the aggressor in June and July of this year?
Yes, that's correct.
And
no, hold up. You said June and July. Now, July, I would not say my daughter was the aggressor to start it off, but I wasn't the aggressor. I think the bigger issue on the 4th of July was between Mr. McMullen and my son. I don't believe I wasn't the aggressor.
Okay.
Lariah.
So your opinion is that really what occurred again, I just want to make sure this is your testimony, that really July 4th had to do more with the altercation or the interaction between your son and Mr. McMullen?
Yeah, I didn't hit nobody. I didn't hit anybody on July 4th.
Okay. And your testimony is you didn't try to prevent your daughter from leaving on that date? No,
I did. Ma'am, I'm not trying to prevent my daughter from leaving. If my daughter is happy there, my answer is no, I did not try to prevent her from leaving. Why would I try to prevent her from leaving? Mr. McMullen pulled off and left his daughter. I didn't try to prevent her from leaving.
Okay.
I not one time.
All right. So actually, he didn't actually pull off and leave her, did he? He pulled off to get away from you and your son who were surrounding the car, right?
She had to walk outside the gate to get to his car. He pulled off and left, meaning he was outside of the gate.
Okay. And this was after after your son had pulled her and she somehow fell to the ground.
He pulled her by her strap when we walked out the front door at the beginning.
Okay. At the beginning. So it was after that Mr. McMullen was outside the gate.
Correct. Because remember,
Okay. And isn't it true that you, since June, that you've actually withdrawn your daughter from some of her activities at school?
Okay, I'm glad you asked.
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance.
Ms. Feynman-Sowers?
Actually, I'm going to withdraw that.
Okay.
I'm going to withdraw it. I do want to go back to your testimony to earlier, back in December. You said that your daughter was living with her grandmother.
No, I didn't say that. I said she left your home in November, right? Correct.
Okay.
By December, she was living with her father in his home, not with her grandmother.
Okay. So when was she living with her grandmother?
I don't know the exact timetable. That's probably a question you could ask your client. I know she was.
No, ma'am. No, just either answer yes, no, or I don't know, or approximately. But please don't respond to the attorneys and tell them what to ask. All right, they're just doing their jobs, representing their clients.
Okay, I'm sorry. Because I honestly I don't know, so I can't give you an exact date. I know she left our home in November. I know by Christmas time, her father was in his own place of residence. So I can't give you the exact date on when she moved from grandmother's house into father's house.
So your daughter left your home and you don't know where she was or for how long?
Of course I know where my daughter was.
So when was she with her grandmother?
You're asking for an exact date?
Yeah.
Ma'am, I can't give you an exact date because you don't realize that I can't talk to her dad. I'm on block. I've been on block. So And then they got Lariah a new phone. So Lariah stopped sharing her locations with me. I did not know where she was, to be honest. I knew you're asking me, when was she with grandma?
Because you said that you testified that all the trouble began on October 31st of 2022.
Mm-hmm.
And your testimony was that that's when Lariah wanted to leave, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
it was back in November when she wanted to leave. It was the first.
She went at the beginning of November.
Correct.
Okay. And your testimony was that you never kicked her out.
I never kicked her out. If I kicked her out, I would have been begging for her to come back home.
Okay. And at that time, you don't know where she went. Is that your testimony?
That's not my testimony. That's not what I said. I told you she went to grandmother's house because her
you don't know how long she
was a residence.
Okay.
I don't know the exact day of. I'm sorry. I don't know the exact day of when she moved from her grandmother's house. I don't know that.
Okay. So you also testified that Mr. McMullen didn't have a residence at that time. How do you know whether he had a residence or not?
His mom, because I asked his mom, why did Lariah have to stay over there with her? And she said, because he doesn't have the proper living arrangements for her right now.
Okay. So you don't actually know whether or not he had a residence at that time. You just know what his mother told you.
Yeah, because she was saying that basically her and her husband was taking Lariah to school. And I was like, well, is she going to go live with her father? And his mom said he doesn't have proper living arrangements. So whether I said residence or proper living arrangements, they did not have space wherever it was for Lariah. I've even asked Lariah in the past.
So it is possible that Mr. McMullen actually did have a residence back in October and November of 2022.
Of course he got a place to live, but he didn't have.
I'm just trying to clarify because you said he didn't have a residence.
Okay. I should have clarified that and said he did not have living arrangements for Lariah. They didn't have space for Lariah.
But you don't have personal knowledge of what sort of home he was living in, how many bedrooms there were, or anything else, right?
No, I don't. But his mom told me it was not enough space where he was at for Lariah.
Okay. And wouldn't it be possible that maybe Lariah was staying with his mother because she lived in the same school district?
No, that's not what happened. Even when speaking with, I guess it's hearsay, but I knew that they were looking for a place to live. I would just say that they were looking for a place to live.
And when you say they, you're referring to Mr. McMullen and his wife?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Did he tell you that?
Did he tell me that he was looking for a place to live? No, Lariah actually told me that. Lariah told me that her dad is getting a place and she'll be moving in with him.
Okay. And when did she tell you this?
This was in December, before Christmas.
Okay, before Christmas. And isn't it true that Lariah contracted COVID in December?
No, it wasn't in December. I'm trying to think, when did she contract COVID? It was probably like towards the end of November. I can't really think off the top of my head. I mean, if I could go off camera, I can go look for some records, but she contracted COVID when she was at her grandmother's house. Okay.
And isn't it true that her grandmother lives with an elderly man?
An elderly man, you mean her husband?
Yes.
Yeah, she lives. I don't know about him being elderly, but I haven't seen.
Okay. And isn't it true that Lariah actually had to leave that home because she contracted COVID?
No, she didn't actually have to. His mom, when I took Lariah to the pediatrician to find out what was going on, because she had been sick for a couple of days. So they finally called me and asked me what urgent care do I take Lariah to. I said, well, I don't really take Lariah to urgent care. What's going on? So I took her to this was like on a Sunday afternoon. I took her to the pediatrician first thing Monday morning. And once they ran the COVID test, it came back positive. I called her grandmother and she said, well, just bring her back over here because I already been sleeping with her because, she's been coughing through the night. So, because I don't want you to take her home and she, infect everybody at our house. So I said, okay, well, Lariah called me the next day and I was checking up on her. She was coughing really bad. Lariah is asthmatic. Lariah has asthma. She was coughing really, really bad. So I decided to go get my baby and bring her home so I could make sure that she was okay. Because I didn't want her to have an asthma attack. His mom doesn't, Lariah McMullen mom doesn't drive. So I didn't want her to be in a bad spot where Lariah needed medical attention and she couldn't get it for her. Because asthma attack, she could die from. And then with COVID, it already messes with your lungs. So I brought her home. She stayed home. I think she had to quarantine here for like 5 days. And then after that, I took her back.
To her grandmother's?
Yep, I took her back to her grandmother's.
Okay. But then you don't know what day she left her grandmother's house?
I don't know, ma'am. I don't know because that information wasn't given to me.
Okay. You testified that your mother had stomach cancer and that she died approximately 3 years ago.
I didn't tell you what kind of cancer my mom had. I told you my mom died of cancer.
Okay. Your mother had cancer, yes?
Yes, she did.
And it wasn't stomach cancer?
I mean, no, you asked me, did I testify? I didn't,
okay.
I didn't tell you.
You're right.
Okay.
She did have stomach cancer?
That's correct.
After a visit with your mom, did you ever physically attack, like during that time, that the 2 years that your mom was suffering with cancer, did you ever physically attack your daughter?
Ma'am, you're asking me during the time when my mom was sick, did I ever physically attack my daughter like those?
Yes.
I'm not understanding the question. Like,
ma'am, you just answer the question yes, no, or I don't know. She asked if you ever physically attacked your daughter during the time that your mom had cancer.
No.
Do you recall ever being in the car with her and striking your daughter in the stomach?
During the time, no, I don't recall striking my daughter in the stomach.
Have you ever taken the phone from your daughter when she's been trying to call 911?
No, I have not. I've taken the phone from her if she doesn't listen. But even if I took a phone from, we have a home phone as well. So if she wanted to call 911, she could still call 911.
Okay. Isn't it true that your daughter has had suicidal thoughts within the past year?
Yes, it is. And even when she was at her grandmother's house, I even set her up for virtual online therapy. Mm-hmm. And they basically allowed her not to attend the therapy session. The therapist called me and said that she kept on walking off from the camera because she was saying that she was trying to get in touch with her stepmom because it was a basketball game that night. And
okay, that's all hearsay. I'm not asking you about that. I'm just, yeah.
She's had suicidal thoughts, and I've tried to get her counseling, but they don't encourage her to attend.
Is it your testimony that she's ever only had, to your knowledge, that she's only thought about suicide since living outside of your home?
I didn't test it. This is our first time talking about suicide. Well, your first time asking me about it.
Yeah. So, yes, I'm asking you about it.
So you're asking me, has she had suicidal thoughts prior to living outside of my home?
Yeah.
She told me one time when she was here, but it came. Can I just answer the question? You want me to expound on, or just answer the question yes or no?
Answer the question yes or no.
Yes.
Okay. And what did you do when she told you that?
I took her to the doctor.
And what month and what year was this?
I don't know exactly off the top of my head. I would say 2022, because I took her in for her physical. So this might have been like June of 2022. And her pediatrician, she gave me a list of people that she recommended. And I'm trying to get, Lariah in to coordinate her with all her cheering stuff or whatever. And we also went back to the doctor, and the doctor, she talked to Lariah, they talk to the kids alone. She talked to Lariah alone, and she was like, seems like she's doing, pretty good. So I did.
Okay. I didn't ask you about what happened with the doctor. I just asked if you were aware of her having suicidal thoughts and what month it was. So you're saying the first time you became aware of the suicidal thoughts was in November of 2022?
No, that's not the first time, because she actually went to the school counselor and told the school counselor, and I was not made aware of it personally. And the counselor actually got in trouble because she allowed Lariah's father to come pick her up. So I was not aware of that situation. I had to kind of find out why Lariah wasn't at school. So she's been mentioned. I'm sorry.
I just want to just follow up. So you're only aware. I'm going to come back to the suicide thing, but because you had mentioned the school, mm-hmm. So you've never notified the school that he's an authorized person to pick up your Lariah, correct?
Relevant, Shauna.
Ms. Simon-Sowers?
She's testified to what happened at the school about the counselor.
It sounds like we're getting into custody dispute issues versus whether there's been a crime of family violence committed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The parties, obviously, I've heard clear testimony, they are not co-parenting. And, the daughter's having issues. So I don't think that's disputed at this point. So I would ask that we move on from there. And obviously, the parties have always had an option to file contempt actions in either direction in the divorce case, or modifications, should they wish.
Right. Okay.
So you may continue, Ms. Simon-Sowers.
Okay. Miss Greer, do you believe your daughter to be a liar or untruthful?
Sometimes.
And are you always truthful?
Pretty much so when it comes to my kids, yes.
Okay. All right. I have no further questions.
All right, any redirect?
Ms. Greer, does Lariah have any items at your home that she needs to retrieve?
I'm not sure. When Lariah left out on June 14th, she took about 5 bags with her. And when I took her to Orlando, I also purchased her some items.
So you don't believe that there's anything else at your home that she needs?
No, she has her MacBook that she needs. And actually, when I gave my father her cheer uniform, because I let her start back cheering at the school, I went in her room to see like maybe if it's like some, stylish sneakers, or how these kids like shoes. I was trying to see if like the sneakers that she liked to wear was in her room, and I didn't see them in her room. So
would there be any reason that Lariah needs to come to your home?
No.
Okay.
All right, ma'am, does she have any clothes or shoes at your home?
The clothes that she has left up there are not clothes that she can wear per se. So she took all of her clothes with her, summer clothes with her.
Okay, what about clothes she can wear to school in the fall and winter?
She took a lot of that stuff too, because it really wasn't she really doesn't wear sweaters. She pretty much wear crop tops, jeans, shorts, and hoodies. So all of her good stuff, like I say, I went in the room because I knew my father was meeting her. I went in the room looking for stuff that she might need. But I mean, if it's something here that she needs, I mean, of course I can get it to her if she tell me exactly, what it is. I'm not trying to withhold anything from my child. I definitely want my child to be clothed. But previously, I think they were asking for them to have a police escort to come over here. And I don't want the police back at my house. As you can imagine, it's
well, let me stop you there, because that was ordered in the ex parte, was it not?
No, I didn't see that.
There's not one trip in the ex parte?
I don't recall seeing that, Your Honor.
There wasn't one? Okay. All right. Well, then never mind. You have okay. So unless it's ordered by the court, you do have a right to not have to do that. All right. Do y'all have any more witnesses, Miss Simmons?
And Miss Burwell, how do you know Kelly Greer and Lariah?
Miss Kelly is my boyfriend's mom, and Lariah is his little sister.
Okay. And were you staying at their home for a point in time?
Yes, ma'am.
And how long were you in Mrs. Greer's home?
I want to say the months of June and July.
Okay. And during that time, did you and Lariah become friendly?
Yeah, we've always been like close, kind of.
Okay. And were you present on the evening of, I guess, June 14th leading into June 15th, 2023?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell the court what happened when you and Lariah arrived at the house that evening?
Yes, that evening, after cheer, we got to the house and I had went to the basement with Miss Kelly while I was eating. And after, Lariah came down there to talk to Miss Kelly, and they began to have a conversation about Lariah's sexuality, and it escalated into an argument.
So what happened exactly? So Mrs. Greer was downstairs in the basement with you.
Yes.
And yes. Where was Lariah?
She came down, I want to say like 20 minutes later.
Okay. So she came downstairs, and then what was Mrs. Greer doing when Lariah came downstairs?
She was having a conversation with someone on the phone.
Okay. And then was Lariah trying to talk to her? What happened?
Yes, ma'am. She was trying to talk to Miss Kelly while she was on the phone, and she kind of began to get agitated. And then Miss Kelly got off the phone, asked Lariah, what did she want to talk about? And that's when the conversation came about of Lariah's sexuality and what she wanted from Miss Kelly. And it just escalated from there.
So what do you mean it just escalated from there?
Lariah didn't like
arguing, or?
Yeah, Lariah didn't like Mrs. Kelly's response to her questions. Lariah asked.
Objection, hearsay.
So don't tell me what Lariah asked. So you said Lariah didn't like.
Wait, hold on. If Lariah's testified and been subject to cross-examination, the witness can say what she said, as she's also a party.
Okay, go ahead, Star.
Do I say what Lariah said?
Yes.
Oh, so she basically asked Miss Kelly why her girlfriend couldn't come over, and but she really was just asking why her girlfriend couldn't come over, and Miss Kelly stated like that wasn't a problem. She just wanted supervision if her girlfriend was to come over. She wanted it to be supervised, and Lariah did not like that. So after Miss Kelly gave her answer of if she comes over, you guys have to be supervised, Lariah began to get upset. It was screaming, yelling. Lariah had threw a weight. She was banging on the table, banging on the wall. And through all of that, Miss Kelly was just sitting down. Like, she didn't really get aggressive with Lariah or anything.
Did Miss Greer appear to be intoxicated in any way?
No, she just was on the phone.
Okay. So after Lariah threw the weight, did anybody try to restrain her or tell her to stop?
No. Miss Kelly did tell her to quiet down because her younger sister was sleeping upstairs. This was about 11 p.m., maybe 10 p.m. at night.
Okay. And so after Lariah threw the weight, did she ever go back upstairs?
Yeah, eventually when Miss Kelly just like wasn't feeding into it, Lariah went upstairs, she slammed the door, and she told Mr. Patrick, which is her stepdad, that her dad was going to beat his ass. And after that, she went to her room, slammed her door. After a while, Miss Kelly was emotional after that, so I calmed her down and went upstairs, and we thought that was going to be the end of the situation. And Lariah was loud in her room, so Miss Kelly walked into her room and told her once again to quiet down because her sister was asleep down the hall. And Lariah was just telling her to get out her room, and she was also on the phone with her dad, and that's when her dad was screaming on the phone. And one thing led to another, and Lariah pushed Miss Kelly, and that's when the fight happened, which I was in the middle of. Lariah had a hold of Miss Kelly's hair, like a really tight grip on Miss Kelly's hair, and Miss Kelly couldn't move whatsoever because Lariah had her hair, and she was like pulling her down by her hair. Miss Kelly never hit her whatsoever. I actually got hit in the process of trying to remove Lariah off of Miss Kelly. And after I finally removed Lariah off Miss Kelly, there was a knot on Miss Kelly's head.
Did you see any bruises or marks on Lariah?
No, ma'am. Miss Kelly hit her.
Did anybody hit Lariah that evening?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And so once you were able to separate them, where did Miss Kelly go?
In her bedroom.
And where was... Go ahead.
I put Lariah in her bedroom and I had closed the door. Miss Kelly was in her bedroom. Everyone was separated at that point.
Okay. And so you said Lariah was on the phone with her dad?
Yes, ma'am.
Was she telling her dad what occurred?
Yes. I was in and out of the room because I was trying to keep them separated, but I do know she was on the phone with her dad and she was telling him what was going on and how she felt.
Did you hear her tell her dad that she was upset with her mom regarding not allowing her girlfriend come over?
Yes, she was stating how it wasn't fair and the typical, it wasn't fair. She doesn't understand. She doesn't want to live there. She doesn't want to be there.
Yeah. Okay. And did her father ever come and get her?
Yes. He actually called me and he told me to drop Lariah off at the gas station. And at this point, it was 12 o'clock at night. And I told him that I wasn't comfortable with dropping a 16 off at the gas station at 12 o'clock at night. And soon after, once again, she was on the phone with him and he was screaming and yelling. He was on speakerphone and he was telling Lariah to pack her shit up. And Miss Kelly came back in the room and basically was just like, Lariah needs to calm down because at this point, the room was trashed. And eventually he came and got her.
Okay. All right. And so did you have any conversations with Lariah after that date? Have you spoken to her?
Not that I recall.
Okay. Were you present on the July 4th incident? Yes. Were you there?
Yes, ma'am.
And so do you know, were you at the door when Lariah came? Where were you at the house?
I actually went with Miss Kelly to open the door for Lariah.
And was Miss Kelly upset in any way?
No, she actually opened the door and was trying to be like affectionate, like, hey, Lariah, I miss you. And Lariah was kind of just, like standoffish, but Miss Kelly did greet her with affection.
Did Miss Kelly seem intoxicated to you?
No, I was outside prior with her cooking.
Did you see her consuming any alcohol that day?
I saw her just take she had one glass of whatever. I'm not sure.
All right. And so after Miss Kelly greeted Lariah at the front door, did Lariah go upstairs and retrieve her items?
Miss Kelly actually had asked her, the whole family was there. So she was like, your family misses you. Come say hi. Lariah came downstairs and she said hi to everyone. And then after she said hi, she went upstairs to grab her things.
Mm-hmm.
And then afterwards, at this point, I was still in the house. And it was just a lot of commotion outside. So I went outside to see what the commotion was. And Miss Kelly, Lariah's dad, a woman who I don't know, my boyfriend, Lariah, were all outside going screaming back and forth. And then that's when everyone proceeded to come outside.
Okay. And was there a physical altercation that you saw?
No. Well, yes. While they were arguing, Lariah threw something across the car. And At that point, she walked around the car on the side where my boyfriend and Miss Kelly was, and she slapped my boyfriend.
And when you say Kamar, okay. All right.
She slapped Kamar in his face. And after that, that is when I pulled Lariah away. And after that, it was just more arguing, and her dad left.
What do you mean he left?
He, like, at this point, everyone's in the street, and he literally just drove off.
Okay. And where was Lariah when he drove off?
In the middle of the street, arguing still.
Okay. And who was she yelling at?
She was arguing with Miss Kelly. Why? I don't know where her frustration came from, but she was arguing with Miss Kelly, and she began to call her bitches and say that she hates her and that she will put a knot on her head again. And yeah.
Did you hear anything between your Kamar and Mr. McMullen?
No, not really. Just him saying to him, "You're just going to leave your daughter. You're just going to leave your daughter." That's what he was screaming as Mr. Mullen was driving away.
Did you see Miss Greer ever try to restrain or hold Lariah down?
No, Miss Kelly never touched Lariah in this incident.
Okay. Did you see, after Mr. McMullen drove away, did you see any bruises or any wounds on Lariah at all?
No, it was impossible because no one touched her whatsoever.
All right. And have you witnessed, since you lived in the home for a couple of months, have you witnessed any other incidents between Lariah and her mother?
No, just the typical, she'll ask a question, she'll get a response, and slam the door, stump up the stairs, get mad, call her a bitch.
So you've heard Lariah curse at her mother?
Yes, on multiple occasions.
Okay. And how would you describe Lariah's relationship with her mom? I know you said that they argue, but
their relationship, when it's good, is really genuine. Something that I kind of wish I had. Miss Kelly is really, like, affectionate, and you can tell she really cares about her kids, like, a lot. I think she's a good mom. I don't think she's whatever she's being described as. But
have you ever seen Miss Kelly being aggressive towards Lariah unnecessarily?
No.
Have you heard any arguing between Mrs. Greer and Mr. McMullen?
No, except on the 4th of July. Other than that, no.
Okay. Were you surprised to see Mr. McMullen at the house?
Yeah, actually, I was.
Why were you surprised to see him there?
Because I know that he doesn't like Miss Kelly. I don't think he likes Mr. Patrick. And
it's Mr. Patrick?
Mr. Greer, Kelly's husband.
Okay.
I don't think he likes them, so I was kind of surprised to see him at the house on multiple occasions.
Okay. And have you heard Lariah talking about things she gets to do at her dad's house that she doesn't get to do at her mother's house?
Objection.
Need you to state a basis for your objection, please.
Irrelevant.
Yeah, I can't. I'm sorry, Your Honor. I'm arguing that I'm trying to show Lariah's state of mind towards her mother. I think it is relevant why she prefers to, maybe be at her father's house than her mother's house. It goes to her.
I'm gonna sustain it as relevant to bias, so to speak. So you may ask that question and you may answer it.
Have you heard Lariah talk about things that she gets to do at her father's house that she doesn't get to do at her mother's house?
Yes, ma'am.
Like what? Can you describe some of those things?
Actually, the night of June, I'm not sure the exact date. We were actually in the car on the way home, and she had stated to me that basically it's free range. She's able to spend time with her girlfriend without being supervised. She's allowed to smoke.
She's allowed to smoke what? She told you that she smokes marijuana at her father's house? Yes. Okay.
And she actually told me that her father smokes with Lariah's girlfriend. She basically told me that she doesn't have a curfew. She's allowed to go wherever she wants without hearing any nagging or complaining about her whereabouts. She just has her freedom, and that's why she prefers to be there.
Okay. And is she allowed to do those things at Miss Greer's home?
Absolutely not. Not the smoking and staying past curfew. Miss Greer does allow her to, go out with her friends, but it's who and where and a curfew.
Has Lariah ever told you that she's afraid of her mother?
No, she just told me that the communication, she said her mom doesn't understand, but she never stated that she's afraid of her mom.
From your observation, is is there a reason that maybe Lariah should be fearful of her mom in some way?
Absolutely not, because Lariah has called her mom bitches and threw things and pounding on walls and things, and Miss Kelly has yet to do anything to her. Even when Lariah had her hair and was hitting her, Miss Kelly never got aggressive, like, ever.
Okay, and what about Mr. Patrick? Have you ever seen him be abusive in any way to Lariah?
No, ma'am. He will walk away. He's quiet. He doesn't engage whatsoever.
Have you ever seen Miss Greer, or Mr. Patrick for that matter, prevent Lariah from going with her dad?
No, unless it's like late at night, or if she has to be, she does extracurricular activities like competitive cheer. So if it's something that affects her schedule with her cheering, then other than that, no, she's pretty open with allowing Lariah. It's just more of communication between Mr. McMullen and Miss Kelly.
Has Lariah ever told you that her mom has threatened to kill her?
No, ma'am.
Have you ever seen Miss Kelly pull out a gun on anybody?
No, ma'am. Mm-hmm.
Did you see a gun on June 14th, June 15th? I say that because it was kind of overnight. Did you ever see anybody brandish a gun on that day?
No.
What about on July 4th?
Absolutely not, no.
Okay. Nothing further on the subject to read already.
All right, Ms. Feynman-Sowers, you may cross-examine.
Hi, Ms. Brunel. So how long have you been in a relationship with Ms. Greer's son?
2.5 years.
Okay.
Known each other for 3.
Okay. And how old are you?
I'm 20 years old.
Why were you living at the Greer household in June and July of 2023?
I just had some personal issues going on, and Miss Kelly allowed me to stay there.
And so you actually don't have a friendship with Lariah, correct?
I mean,
you're not close friends. You just know each other because you've been over at the house.
Yes and no. We've had deep conversations before. We've went out to eat together before. We've bonded over the time. I'm there for holidays, birthdays. I would say we have a relationship.
Okay. And what is Ms. Greer's weight? How much does she weigh, do you think?
I'm not sure. Sorry, I'm not sure.
Okay. Go ahead.
Maybe like 150. I don't really know. I'm 145 and I'm kind of small, so I really don't know.
Okay. Is Ms. Greer bigger than you are?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So she's more than 145 pounds?
I believe so.
Okay. And how much would you estimate that Lariah weighs?
Probably between like 115, 120.
Okay. And how tall do you think she is?
Me and her are almost the same height. I want to say about 5 feet, 5'1".
Okay. And how tall is Miss Greer?
She's a little slight taller than me. I want to say about 5'2", maybe 5'3".
Okay. And how often would you say that she has alcohol in the evenings? How often? How many times per week?
That I can't recall. Like, I don't know the answer because I'm not there to answer the question. But for the time frame that I was there, I only seen Miss Kelly drink once on like I said, that night of the June. She only had one drink. I mean, July, the one drink. June, like I said, I was with Lariah that evening, so that I don't recall because I wasn't.
Okay, and just to be clear, you were on June 15th. Both you and Lariah were at a cheer event in Kennesaw, correct?
Well, it was actually Lariah's cheer practice, and I had picked her up.
Okay, and that was in Kennesaw, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and isn't it true that event ended at 9:30?
I believe so. It was nighttime.
Okay, and on the way back, you all stopped and got something to eat before you went to the Greer household?
Yes, ma'am.
So wouldn't it be accurate to say that it takes like over an hour to get from Kennesaw to the Greer household?
I would say about maybe 40 minutes, 45 minutes.
45 minutes. Okay. And how long did you stop to get something to eat?
We got it to go, so it was quick. We probably were there maybe 5-10 minutes.
All right. So it'd be fair to say that you actually didn't arrive back at the Gurr household till after 10:30 p.m. on the 14th, 15th of June.
That I don't recall. I don't recall what time we arrived back at the household.
Just to brief guys, have you been watching any of the YouTube broadcast of these proceedings prior to your testimony?
No, ma'am. I wasn't aware.
Okay. And where are you located now?
I'm in Grayson, Georgia.
Just to be clear, your testimony was that Lariah stated while she was on the street outside of the household, surrounded by other people, that's when her father drove off.
Yeah.
Okay. And your testimony is, correct me if I'm wrong, it was at that time that she stated to her mother, I'll give you another knot on your head.
Yes. And just to correct something, Lariah's dad wasn't surrounded. Like, neither was Lariah. Like, it was, anyone could, like, walk away if they wanted to.
Okay. And it's your testimony that you never observed your boyfriend touch Lariah?
I mean, when she made the statement, I will put another knot on your head, and raised her hand, he pushed her hand down. Nothing aggressive, though. And after he did that, she said, "Nigga, don't touch me," and proceeded to yell at Miss Kelly.
Okay. So you never observed your boyfriend pulling Lariah by her purse strap?
No, ma'am, absolutely not.
Okay. You never observed your boyfriend striking Lariah?
Absolutely not.
Okay. And were you present when Lariah actually left the house?
The June or July?
I'm sorry, in July.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And who left the house first?
As in, who are we comparing? Lariah's dad or Lariah?
No. Okay. So Lariah, you testified that Lariah came into the household. You were present when Ms. Greer opened the door. Mm-hmm. Lariah came in. She went down to the basement. She said hello to everybody. Then she went upstairs to collect her things.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did you see her come down from her bedroom?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Did you see her leave the house?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So could you tell me what point in time you then viewed the commotion on? So was Lariah already out of the house?
Yes.
When you got there?
Yeah, at that point she was already outside the house, and that's when they were screaming, yelling. I don't know what was said. I just saw her, throw something across the car. I guess she didn't hit him or whatever.
Okay, so at this time, just to be clear, when you came outside of the house, that's when you saw Lariah. She was already at her father's car.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And who else was around the car?
Miss Kelly and Kamar.
Okay. Would it surprise you to know that your brother actually pulled on his sister's purse strap?
You said, would it surprise me?
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of.
Okay. Would it surprise you to know that he struck Lariah?
Absolutely. Yes, it would surprise me.
Okay. You testified that you've never seen Miss Kelly being aggressive towards Lariah. Would that be in the 2.5 years that you've known the family?
Yes, ma'am. I've never seen her be aggressive.
Have you ever observed Miss Kelly making threats to Lariah?
No.
Did you hear Miss Kelly asking her husband on June 15th for the code to the gun lockbox?
No.
No, you didn't hear that?
No, ma'am.
Okay, and you testified that you remained upstairs outside of Lariah's bedroom, and Miss Kelly was in her bedroom?
Yes.
So you were on the same floor?
Yes.
And Miss Kelly came out of her bedroom?
Yes. Are you talking about after the fight?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Your testimony is you never heard her ask for the lockbox code?
No, ma'am. I wasn't aware that Miss Kelly had a gun.
Okay. All right. I don't have any further questions.
All right. Any redirect?
Nothing further, Your Honor, no.
All right. May this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Any further witnesses from the respondent? Ma'am, we'll place you in the waiting room and you may log off from there.
Okay, thank you.
No, Your Honor, we're not going to call any further witnesses.
Okay. All right.
Your Honor, I would like
Yes.
to call a rebuttal witness.
Yes.
I'd like to call Carol McMullen, please, in your relationship to Mr. McMullen.
I'm his wife.
And how long have you been married?
We have been married since September of 2022.
Okay. And were you in a relationship prior to that?
Yes, we met September of 2021.
There's been some testimony about certain conditions at your home that I'd like you to just briefly address. To your knowledge, is Lariah allowed to smoke weed in your household?
Absolutely not.
To your knowledge, is she allowed to have romantic interests over unsupervised?
Absolutely not.
Okay. And why is that not allowed?
Anytime that Lariah has any company, they're in the living room, which is a general space in our home, and the entire family is usually there at some point interacting. They're not allowed upstairs whatsoever. So all of her visits are supervised.
Okay. So there's been a lot of testimony about that. My understanding is that you remained in your vehicle on the curb outside of the Greer household, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And while you were there, did you have a view of the front door?
Yes.
Okay. And could you tell me who you observed coming out of the front door after Lariah had entered?
The first person that I saw emerge from the front door was Lariah herself. And then I saw her brother, and then I saw her mother, Miss Kelly.
Okay. During that, and did you look away from them while they were walking out the door?
No, I was actually recording because something just didn't feel right when we got there and we saw the cars. It just felt wrong. So I had my phone out to record because Miss Kelly had already been at my vehicle asking us to get out of the vehicle. And we were saying that we didn't feel it was the appropriate time. So I had my phone out and I was recording. And when I saw the interaction from Mrs. Greer, her son, Kamar, and how they lunged at Lariah, she hit the ground. I, at that point, dropped my phone because I was in somewhat of disbelief. From there, that's when I saw Lariah get up off the ground and she threw her phone. She started to walk towards the vehicle. Her brother then came to the vehicle telling my husband, get out of the car. I've been wanting to fight your ass, nigga. And I told my husband, stay in the vehicle. Do not get out. If you get out, it's going to get much worse than what it already is. He remained in the vehicle. After he had extended the door, I got him back in. And from there, Mrs. Greer made the comment to pull me out of the vehicle as well. And they just started beating, kicking, doing all kinds of things to the side of my vehicle when she kicked my car. At that point, we didn't feel safe, so we did pull off. We pulled at that point to the entrance of the subdivision itself, and we stopped. When we looked back, Mrs. Greer and her son were approaching our vehicle. That at that point, the entire family was in the street. So we then pulled completely out of the subdivision and pulled across the street, and we were calling the police. At that time, Lariah called her father to come back and pick her up because she was able to get away from her mother and her brother. We picked her up and we waited for the police. When the police arrived, they stated that basically because Kamar was her brother, that there wouldn't be any repercussions, that we would need to seek, civil action, which is basically what we did.
Okay. During that interaction, did you hear Mrs. Greer make any threats toward Lariah?
At the time, she was making all of her threats towards my husband because she had already argued with Lariah inside of the home, and she definitely appeared to be intoxicated.
Okay. What just give me what made you believe that? What about her demeanor made you believe she was intoxicated?
The way that she approached my vehicle, the way that they had to pull her back into the house by her waist, her reemerging from the home, just the level of anger that was in her face when she approached my vehicle made me feel very unsafe. I just felt like her demeanor was off, and you could tell that it wasn't her normal approach to any situation. She was belligerent.
Okay. Was she stumbling?
She was not stumbling, but she was enraged.
Okay. So you talked about a video that you took. How long is that video?
I think it's maybe about 2 to 3 seconds. And in that video, you can see where Kelly pushes Kamar.
Objection, Your Honor. No video has been presented.
Well, I'd like to pull up that video if I may.
All right. So hold on. She can lay the foundation for the video if she wishes to.
Yes, she can, Your Honor. But we talked before this hearing. We exchanged evidence. She never provided me a copy with the video. That was the whole reason for the reset for today anyway, was for us to exchange evidence. So I haven't seen any video. She even sent me a message saying that she was not going to present any videos today in court.
Ms. Feynman-Sowers?
That That is true, but they did send that email. However, given that the testimony, this is a video that's only a few seconds, it actually shows the son.
Your Honor, I'm going to object to her talking about what the video shows.
I get to
Well, I'll
address
say stop.
this issue.
So hold on, stop, please. So anyone can testify about a video they made and what they say it shows. But whether that goes to, I mean, so I don't understand why it wasn't produced to counsel before any of this hearing, if it exists and could have been.
I'm not sure if it was submitted to counsel, but I definitely sent it to
Ma'am, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the attorney.
Your Honor, this case, first of all, wasn't continued to exchange the evidence. I wasn't aware that there was any video evidence. I thought that there might have been. I did receive video evidence that I determined that wouldn't be necessary to admit. However, given how the testimony has developed, that there's been an absolute denial here of, the son putting his hands on Lariah. I find the need now to show in rebuttal as a means of impeaching the witnesses that actually.
So my understanding is one witness, I believe the respondent herself, said that he did put hands on her by grabbing her purse to keep her from going after her mother, was her version, or something to that effect.
Right.
So the only impeachment will be the other witness. Is that correct?
Yes.
But she says she was not in there when it happened, and just that she would be surprised that he struck her, not that she was a witness to him not striking her, because she said she heard commotion and went outside. Yes. So who are we impeaching?
We're also Ms. Greer, because she also testified that is the only physical contact that she saw between her son and Lariah. And this video will show, it's very brief, and it does show him engaging in additional physical contact other than just pulling her purse strap.
Okay, but then in that circumstance, Your Honor, I would argue relevance. He's not a party to this petition.
Well, she's doing it for impeachment purposes of your witness and to your witness's credibility, not for showing that somebody else assaulted the petitioner.
Right. And like I said, Your Honor, we discussed this prior to, there's lots of videos out here. There's, and we discussed this, and she should have not purported to me that she wasn't going to provide any, because my response would have been different as well. I could have shown my videos, but she said she was not presenting any of that evidence today.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is you will have a chance on Sir Rebuttal to present any evidence and videos that you wish to, and this may go on for longer in the night. So since it is impeachment, have you submitted it, Ms. Feynman-Sowers?
Yes, I have.
All right, at this point,
Judge, I do apologize for interrupting you, but he is not connected to audio.
Okay, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, we are just requesting that this temporary protective order preventing Mrs. Greer from having contact with her daughter be denied. A protective order is meant to shield a person from violence or harassment. The problem that we have in this case is that the violence and harassment is coming from a minor child. Every situation that you've heard of in this court today from every witness all started with Lariah being upset. Mrs. Greer is allowed to parent her child. It's not harassment to tell her no. It's not threatening to prevent her from doing things that you believe can cause her some type of harm. It's not violence when you protect and shield yourself from blows from a 16-year-old child who's being mean and aggressive, who's tearing up your house, who's having temper tantrums and throwing things, which Lariah admitted to. Lariah is just being disobedient. So instead of being, abiding by her mother's rules, what she decides to do is act out, call her dad, and run to his house to avoid all the responsibility and consequences of her actions. I'm a mother. We've all had incidents and heard of stories of out of control teens. And the way to deal with that situation is not to allow them to just run away and act like it doesn't exist. Your Honor, Mrs. Greer has stated if Lariah is more comfortable and feels like she wants to be at her father's house, she's fine with that. She's okay with that. She hasn't gone to Mr. McMullen's house to make Lariah come back not one time, even though she could have. She could have filed, paperwork with the court. She could have filed a warrant against him for, interfering with the custody of a minor. She hasn't done those things. She wants what's best for Your Honor. You've heard a lot of testimony and a lot of allegations here, Your Honor, but what you haven't heard is that Mrs. Greer was arrested for any violence. You did hear that Mrs. Greer has been to Mr. McMullen's home causing any kind of problems. You never heard any testimony regarding that. You did hear that Mrs. Greer constantly beats or abuses Lariah. In fact, you never heard one person say Lariah had a visible bruise or she looked like she had been struck. You never heard any testimony regarding any of that. You did hear that defects has been called to Mrs. Greer to her home because of some allegations of abuse. You didn't even hear, even though they mentioned a gun, no one said they ever saw it. You did hear that Mrs. McMullen was repeatedly calling Lariah, threatening her, harassing her in any way. Mrs. Greer is certainly not the problem in this situation. what is happening here is that, Lariah is inciting violence in her home. She's being rude, abusive, and disrespectful to her mother, who she perceives is her antagonist, and she's acting out. And when Miss Greer responds, then now all of a sudden, Miss Greer is the threatening and violent one. And you can see that, like I said, because only time that they've talked about problems were all times when Lariah was upset. And then when Miss Greer tries to defend herself, now all of a sudden, she's an abusive alcoholic. If they were so afraid that Miss Greer was going to harm Lariah, why would they allow her to go with her mother for 5 days to Florida? There was nobody there that could have protected her. If Mrs. Greer really wanted to abuse Lariah, why would she call her father or even tell Lariah, go with your dad? To me, that sounds like something responsible. I'm trying to diffuse the situation. I don't want this to continue. I don't want this to lead to violence. Yes, go to your dad so we can all cool off and, get back together. This whole July 4th situation, everybody stated that the first argument began outside where Lariah wasn't even present. Miss Greer was trying to attempt to have a conversation with Mr. McMullen regarding what they were going to do about Lariah. And yes, and even his wife admitted, everybody was upset. Everybody was yelling. And even in the video that you see, you do see her son pushing her. He did not try to strike her. He was actually pushing her more towards going away from the house. We don't know what happened on the inside, Your Honor, but certainly something did, because everybody testified that when she went in, things were fine. But when she came out, there was certainly an issue. Certainly Mr. McMullen and Lariah didn't really have any real fears about Lariah being at Mrs. Greer's home. Because if they did, Your Honor, yes, she had things there. They could have said, you know what, just put it in a box, leave it at the front door. Or if it's just a check, just mail it. But no, they took the bold step of going to her home after there had already been, altercations between them during the June 4th and June 15th incident where threats were being exchanged by both parties. But no, they made the decision to take Lariah there. This whole thing could have been prevented. If just said, Lariah, if your mother's so mean to you, if she's threatening to harm you, you don't need to go. There was certainly a lot more that could have been done, in that situation. And like everyone has said, the initial thing was not even directed at Lariah. So all these instances of repeated acts of violence, I haven't heard any, Your Honor. What I have heard is Mrs. Greer responding to things that Lariah has done and has said, and responding to Mr. McMullen. I do understand that on that day, Lariah and her brother, had an altercation, but her brother doesn't even live there. You heard Mrs. Greer testify that her husband had gone to pick him up because he was away at college. All that circumstance was between Lariah and her brother. It was not Miss Greer. And you didn't hear any testimony from anybody saying that Lariah and her brother had any previous altercations that were physical. Yes, brothers and sisters argue all the time, but you never heard any testimony that Lariah had been harmed by Kamar, in any way, in any instance prior to this incident that happened on July 4th. And even then, all you heard was that he pushed her down. It's my opinion, Your Honor, and I believe that even if you consider everything that you've heard here today, and you believe that everything that Lariah has said and Mr. McMullen said is true, it still doesn't rise to the level of her being restrained from having contact with her daughter. There's no repeated acts of violence that have been reported. You even heard Lariah say on November 15th, she wasn't harmed in any way. There was nothing physical. The only thing that you heard from Lariah herself being physical was on June 14th. She says her and her mother both engaged in hitting each other. You didn't hear her say, her mother just came out of the blue and just attacked her for no reason. She even, admitted to the fact that she had thrown stuff in the basement, a 10-pound weight and all those things. I heard Mr. McMullen state that he's told Lariah to not be respectful to her mother. But what else is being done to help this situation? Because at the end of the day, Lariah's going to need her mother. Lariah's going to need her family. She has a lot of issues, Your Honor, and this is a very delicate time in her life. And this is not a time where Mrs. Greer should be prevented from parenting. And that's what having this TPO against her would prevent her from doing. She can't talk to her teachers. She can't check on her schoolwork. She can't even call and say, Lariah, are you okay? How are you doing? Lariah hasn't been raised by her father. She's always been in the home with Mrs. Greer. There was a brief period where she stayed with her dad, but not for any significant amount of time. And so, she has the right to inquire as to what his parenting abilities, what's going on in his household. And with this TPO, she would be prevented from doing that. And Your Honor, I agree. Lariah does need protection, but it's not from her mother. It's from herself. Lariah needs to be in counseling. Lariah needs both of her parents to be there to help protect her and provide for her. And we ask that you just find that there's no grounds for this temporary protective order that would, a permanent order that would last for 12 months in this situation.
All right, thank you. Ms. Simon Showers?
Just generally, regardless of a child's actions or defiance, never justifies a basis for a parent to be physically aggressive with a child. Lariah has testified, and she's admitted that there have been physical altercations. You really have to weigh the credibility of the witnesses here, Your Honor, because it appears that the incident in the room on June 14th or 15th, the only persons present were Lariah and her mother. And Lariah admits that after her mother pushed her into the closet and she hit her head, that she was defending herself, and they were fighting. So there's no dispute about that. No one ever mentioned, I'm sorry, I find it a little bit difficult to believe that a child of her height and weight could actually credibly, pull her mother down and drag her by her hair, and her mother doesn't do anything about that. I think it's probably more accurate what the child's described as there was a physical altercation. There shouldn't have been a physical altercation in the first place. Lariah has expressed a real fear of being in that household. Even Ms. Greer admits on June 15th, she went to her car, she got the lockbox that contains the gun, and she brought it back into the household. Ms. Greer admitted that she did yell out to her husband, "What is the code?" And she also admitted that Lariah would have been able to hear that because she was in her room when this occurred, and she was saying this on the second floor. So I think that there's some credibility, that bolsters the child's credibility in terms of what she heard her mother asking for the lockbox code so she could take the gun out. Ms. Greer says it was to, in the event that Mr. McMullen came over and threatened her, and that's all she says about it. The child has also testified as to what occurred on July 4th. Now, there seems to be, the child's admitted to getting into an argument, and she does admit to there being a weight. She didn't throw it at her mother. She threw it in the room. Thereafter, her mother, made threats. She took swipes at her daughter. She tried to prevent her daughter from leaving. She didn't prevent her brother from pulling her and knocking her to the ground. She obviously was very agitated. She's going out to the car. She admits to doing that. She came out twice to try to engage Mr. McMullen in some sort of interaction. This is not about, preventing a relationship between the mother and daughter. This is about providing this child with some protections until she can get some help. She's lucky to have a parent who, could take her in after her mother kicks her out, even though her mother denies doing that. It seems pretty clear from all the testimony that Lariah is very clear she doesn't want to be in that household. Lariah has also been very clear the only reason that she went to Florida for those 5 days was because her mother was threatening to call the police and accuse her father of kidnapping. Because, and also Ms. Simmons mentioned that, of course, because Ms. Greer has custody, that would have been one of her options, but she never followed through on that. So I think that adds, additional credibility into what Lariah was saying as to the reasons why she went on that Florida trip. She didn't have much, her sister was there. So there was another third party. I don't know if the acts of violence have occurred. It doesn't sound like these acts have occurred in the presence of the 6-year-old. It sounds like most of these have occurred after the child was in bed. I wouldn't assume that Lariah would be concerned. I just don't think that the fact that she went to Florida overcomes her expression to you about the fear she has being in her mother's household. You've heard, additionally, you've heard testimony, even though Ms. Greer is telling the court that she doesn't have a problem with Lariah being with her dad. Mr. McMullen did testify, and so did his wife. At the time that they went there on July 4th, she was screaming, "No, you're not going to take my daughter. I raised her 16 years. Ms. Simmons makes an argument that is not supported by the evidence in this case, that Mr. McMullen hasn't parented this child. The court really hasn't, there's been no evidence about how much time he has actually spent parenting the child. She just automatically assumes that he has not been. So I think you can disregard that argument. And I want to urge the court, this is a preponderance of the evidence. I do realize that in this case, really you're assessing the credibility of the witnesses. That we've shown that the daughter is not making this up just so she could live with dad, so she can smoke marijuana and see her girlfriend. That doesn't seem to be the reason that she's doing this. She's very troubled. She's admitted to being suicidal. And I worry if there are not any protections for her, that this is just going to continue. She's expressed to you she just can't take it anymore. She really cannot be in that household. Perhaps there could be, contact with a therapist as recommended by that therapist, or some sort of supervised setting. Mr. McMullen is not trying to cut off the parent-child relationship. What he's trying to do is get control of this situation so his daughter feels safe. She can heal from all the trauma that she's experienced at home, and then they can move on from that. And all these other issues we'll address in a custody proceeding. But I implore the court to just provide this child with some protections until all the matters can be addressed fully.
All right, thank you. Again, I'm just deciding by preponderance of the evidence if any single act of family violence has been committed, and whether there's a reasonable likelihood of future acts of family violence without the order being in place. It's been a very long hearing. Yeah. There's been a lot of testimony and a lot of evidence presented. And since you are both represented by counsel and it is after 5 o'clock, the order will not be filed tomorrow anyway. So I'm going to take it under advisement so I can take a minute to look at everything and look at the law. What I will say is, however I decide does not mean that I try to reconcile discrepancies in testimony with, as the jury instruction says, trying to find that no party is purposefully lying, right? Mm-hmm. And so I will try to reconcile that. And however I find does not mean one party is completely in the right and the other party is completely in the wrong. Regardless, I have heard testimony of adults not acting well. However a child responds, you don't have a right to lay hands on them. But if a child commits an act of violence against you and is almost an older teenager, there may be a self-defense argument there. I'm just going to be looking at the evidence as to whether there has been an act of family violence committed by this child against this child by the respondent in any of what I've heard, and whether there's a reasonable likelihood of future acts. This child probably really needs a guardian ad litem at this time, because I don't know if parents are not talking to each other without threats or curse words, then I don't know how you can agree on anything in a custody case. And that would be the best interest of the child. But I'm not going to roll off the cuff. I'm going to go over my notes and look at everything and be able to make a reasoned decision. And then that should be filed tomorrow, and y'all will be emailed a copy of it. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.